and down.
What is happening, everybody? Greg Ehrenberg here to break down another NBA slate to bring us into the weekend as you come in. Like the video, subscribe to the YouTube channel, leave a comment below to let me know whatever it is you guys like or dislike about my bets or any kind of questions, comments you have. Any comment you have below, it is appreciated. It does help us out a whole bunch in the YouTube algorithm, and it's something that helps us gain followers. Even if it doesn't seem like much, it really does. It helps prioritize stuff on YouTube, and it helps us keep our content free. So any comments that you guys leave, they're all appreciated, whether they're positive, negative, jokes, whatever it may be. I love all of them. And once again, another profitable day on the betting video yesterday. Had two bets. They were both plus money bets, and both ended up winning. One was John Morant under 8.5 assists. That one won. The other one was Brandon Ingram over 1.5 threes. That one lost. Here's the irony of this stuff. I actually think in hindsight, the Brandon Ingram bet was significantly better than the John Morant bet. I don't think the John Morant bet was good. I think the Brandon Ingram bet was really good, yet the Morant one won and the Ingram one lost. So Morant under 8.5 assists was plus money. He finished with 8 assists, but that was aided by a couple of things. The game was a blowout, and John Morant got into some early foul trouble. All of that contributed to him falling a little bit short of his assist prop. As for Brandon Ingram, he had one of his better scoring games of the entire season. He just didn't knock down threes. So we saw Brandon Ingram actually put up 26 points yesterday. He was going nuts in the second half of that game against the Dallas Mavericks. The Pelicans almost got back from a 30-point deficit to win that game. I think they were down as much as 32 at one point. And Brandon Ingram was the main driver. Why? And actually, he was at 1-3 and took a three right at the buzzer. It was a good look, and had that fallen, would have hit the over 1.5 threes, and it was a pretty significant plus money bet we had on that. But either way, we were still plus money for the day in the video, which I could always be happy with. And then also, I had a good DFS win yesterday. I ended up hitting in a FanDuel tournament, so won some money on that. Got the screenshot right there, and just like to share my wins with you guys. Always nice when profit on anything. So always good there. And whenever you guys have your own profitable bets as well, hit me up on Twitter. I like to see those, like to retweet them also, get those some attention. And maybe if you guys send me some bet slips, we can feature those on the show as well. So just something to keep in mind if that is something that interests you guys. But let's talk about the Friday slate. These are my favorite bets of the night. So we're going into the Friday slate with a handful of key injury news, which typically happens on bigger NBA slates. But one player's already been ruled out that I don't think has quite been priced appropriately for the situation.
Damn, dude, who edited that Greg video? Looked pretty sweet. No, it wasn't. No, not good. Yeah, what's going on, everybody? Welcome to, I told you I wasn't good, the Stokastic.com NBA Deeper Dive presented by No House Advantage. I'm Dave Loughran at Lofty_D on Twitter, joined by Adam Scherer at Ship My Money DFS, breaking down an 8-gamer to close out the work week here. An interesting one, no less. No De'Aaron Fox, couple other spots we're waiting on that could be pretty significant. Cameron Johnson ruled out. That's making some waves in the ownership projections, at least right now. We got a lot to talk about. Oh, and Tyrese Haliburton, second of a back-to-back after returning from that pretty long absence. So there's a lot of different ways this slate could break during this show.
Yeah, for sure. Knock on wood, not a ton of relevant news, but certainly some big stuff. You mentioned Haliburton. That's an early game. We have Embiid questionable as well, which obviously would have big impacts. Rudy Gobert questionable. Definitely some stuff that could break and change the way the slate looks.
You ever think about like how much respect we should have for people who work outside in these type of days in the Northeast?
Yeah, so there's a bunch of construction going on around my building. And so whenever I look out my window, I just see them like building a building next to me. And when it's like cold, I've thought about it a lot lately where it's just like, man, I'm really glad that I am not out there doing that.
Yeah, like I'm just not tough enough to do that every single day. I could
also admit. Also, and like I'm scared of heights. There's a crane like outside my building with just like, a ladder that you climb like all the way up, like onto a beam that is like higher than the top of my building. I'm like, no, and then like I'll see the guy up there. I'm like, there is no way in hell.
No chance, man. My brother-in-law, great guy, good friends with him, but I hit him up and say, I hope you're not working outside. He installs glass, like massive pieces of glass on huge buildings. And he's like, been outside all day. It's terrible.
Yeah.
And I'm like, let me finish typing up this run sheet in climate controlled 68 degree house. But yeah, man, much respect to anybody out there doing that. I can handle it. Just got to be moving around. So to all of you watching today's show, came back from work, working outside in these cold temperatures, I salute you from inside of my warm office. All right. So we got 8 games to talk about today. We'll kick it off with Portland, Washington, work our way through this all the way to close it out with Atlanta and Utah. Do you see this shaping up as another stars and scrubs type of situation today where yes, there's going to be value in the 3K ranges. Are we going to have to bite the bullet on a lot of these guys and go, you know what? Their per minute production kind of stinks, but the matchup's good or the minutes should be there. And we'll just eat it and go with the $3,000, $3,600 guys?
I mean, yes and no. One difference today from yesterday is that you don't have any of Jokic, Giannis, or Luka. And so it just makes that top tier a little bit less important to jam in, especially, we have Embiid questionable as well, but he's in a great matchup. You also have Sabonis playing in a great spot without Fox for a lot less money. You have Jason Tatum in probably one of the least appealing games on the slate, not to take anything away from Tatum, but it's just a different slate in that regard where whenever you have all three of Jokic, Giannis, and Luka on a slate, it's more so like you're probably going to just need to get lucky on the right cheap pieces. Whereas when you don't have them, I think like the upper mid range is the more appealing range to be in today.
Yeah, absolutely. And, whereas yesterday we had a ton of top price guys. Yeah, no Giannis today, no Luka, no Jokic on this slate. Some great players, but nothing exorbitantly high. So let's dive into it. First things first, though. What's up, everybody? Happy that you guys are with us. David said Adam reacted like a dog was about to attack.
I had no idea. I didn't even remember that you had a dog, so it got me completely off guard.
She sleeps. I put a bed back here in my office for her to sleep when it's just me home. And sometimes she's just an asshole and decides to do that. But
yeah. I just was not expecting the dog at all.
Yeah. I heard you pause.
Oh yeah, like I jumped. I was just like, because it was just like a quick noise that I was not at all expecting to hear.
She's got a loud bark, man, real loud bark. She scared the shit out of these 2 people walking their little dog the other day on our bike path. And like, I didn't really know what to do. So I just didn't even say anything. And I just stared at them and walked by them. Because what do you do? Listen, that's the thing though. She's a good dog, but she's a decent size and she's got a loud bark. And I have her on the prong collar. So it scares people. But like if if she's being good and a small dog lunges at her first, can you really blame her for like going back at it and being like, I can take this dog? I don't think there's any blame there, but I hate it. Anyway, back to business. Appreciate you guys being here. Apologize for the dog. That's what happens when you're working from a home office, in case you guys didn't know.
Yeah. Can you start doing your shows outside?
Yeah. Today, I'd quit 100%. Be done. You can't work outside if you're not moving around. Like you agree with that. You have to keep the blood flowing. Otherwise you're a dead man.
Yeah. You can't you couldn't just sit at a desk outside today.
No, you might see some Chinese spy balloons, but
I don't even know what that's about. I just keep seeing it referred to, but I have no idea.
Massive Chinese sky balloon just floating above Montana, dude.
Yeah.
Yeah. Good stuff. It's good times we're living in, for sure. Glad I brought a kid into this world 2 years ago. Hit that thumbs up, though. We're 136 already. We got 1,100 people watching with us. We hit 500 yesterday, smoked it, crushed 500 when I was with you guys and with Adam on Tuesday. Monday, same thing. Can we just make this a thing? Can we just make it like, all right, we come in here, we hit the thumbs up. It's like, teams where they hit that, whatever that stupid encouragement sign is. What?
Ted Lasso. I don't remember what it said, but like the sign right before you out on the field.
Yeah, they all have. They're dumb. They don't do anything, but they give it a good tap. Come in here like you're leaving out of the locker room onto the field. Hit that thumbs up. And let's just rip this north of 300 out of the gate and subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so yet. Kevin, the reason it was from what I heard, 3 of the nuclear silos, and I don't know much about this, in the United States. One of them apparently is in Montana. Who knows if there's any truth to that? I didn't fact check it, but that's what I read today.
I went to Montana summer of 2021. Great scenery, like not a bad place to just fly around and look at it.
Oh, you think they were sightseeing?
Yeah. I think it's just
yeah. That good. Yeah. President Xi's like, I've never seen Montana before.
Right.
Can we set something up? That'd be amazing.
I know it might really piss off the Americans, but I just really want to see Montana where nobody lives.
That'd be so great. All right. Let's talk some basketball here. And yeah, 250 likes out of the gate. So appreciate it. Let's talk about the Portland Trailblazers and Washington Wizards. There's so much more we could talk about, like Kyrie Irving asking for trades, but I know you and me, and we'll be like, oh, we're good. And then we're not even a game in 20 minutes into this one. But that's why you got live before lock next. Anyway, dude, Lillard's on a tear right now. Like when this guy starts playing like this, I know he's expensive. Don't get me wrong. I mean, really, he's one of the most expensive players on the entire slate. But going up against Washington, massive usage lately, like 35% usage over the last month. I mentioned this, it might have been to you the other day, but isn't it remarkable that this dude is 5th in free throw attempts this season? Just like absolutely crushing at the line, 10 plus 3-point attempts per game. And he's also a good playmaker with a 30% assist rate.
Yeah, he's been playing really, really well this year. Usage rate is up, even when you have Nurkic in. Now you don't have Nurkic, which is likely to give him, a little bit of a bump on top of that. Certainly a good spot. The only question really is, can you get to that price tag? You do have plenty of other good point guard options as always, but I think he looks good here. And I think he is a little bit easier to get to than normal. And he's pulling 17% ownership as a result. But the reason is just because you don't have all of the other guys like the other day. Like the other day, he played with, Morant, not on the slate. Gilgeous-Alexander's not on the slate. You have Trae Young. De'Aaron Fox is out. So you don't have quite as much. You don't have Luka. So you don't have quite as much opportunity cost at the position. It does make it a little bit easier to get to Dame, I think, and it is a good matchup as well.
It does certainly seem like a good spot, especially with the usage and minutes that he's getting. Once you get past Lillard, though, and start talking about the rest of this team, we discussed this at length. The Josh Hart trap can be crippling for some people when they buy into it, and then he finishes with like 7 fantasy points. But that ownership is nowhere near where it's been in recent slates, despite the same price point. It's really guys like Drew Eubanks getting ownership today. Jeremy Grant's questionable, but Yusuf Nurkic is out of this one.
Yeah, and Grant's expected to play.
He is now expected to play? Okay. So, let's talk about Eubanks out of the gate with Yusuf Nurkic sideline.
Yeah, so Eubanks should get the start in place of Nurkic. In the last start, he only played about 22 minutes. Trendon Watford played 26 off the bench. But typically, you can expect Eubanks to play around 27 or 28 minutes when he starts in place of Nurkic. He's still cheap. You obviously have the opportunity cost at center this year, or the slate, as you do with every slate. But I think that the ownership on Eubanks makes sense. He wasn't really pulling it this morning. It was pretty weird, but 5 total games started this year where Nurkic has been out and Dame's been in. 0.8 DraftKings points per minute in 28 minutes per game. And again, you have a pretty good matchup here as well.
All right. So is there anyone else from Portland that stands out to you then?
No, I think Simons, Grant, Hart are all just sort of like last piece in type guys. Simons and Grant pulling a little bit more ownership than Hart because they are better point per minute guys, but they're also a little bit more expensive. If you want to try and pivot away and leverage against Drew Eubanks, Trendon Watford is likely to be the backup center here. He has power forward eligibility at 3,300. So he looks somewhat interesting. We have him projected for about 18 DraftKings points, but I don't think he's any sort of a priority. It's just more, large field tournaments trying to get lucky in non-Eubanks lineups. It makes some sense.
All right, let's talk about Washington on the other side. I don't know why I still do this to myself. I got an email from NBA Top Shot. Usually it's just like delete. You need to do this to complete your challenge. Like, no.
Yeah, I can't even figure out like what you're supposed to do.
No, I didn't even try. But they had one where it was like locker packs today, and it's a guaranteed series 1 in there. I was like, all right, fine, I'll do it. It's guaranteed series 1. There's some rares, whatever, some Giannis and Beads, Zions and stuff. So I did. It was 40 trade tickets, trading a bunch of garbage, and I got a Bradley Beal series 1, which is probably at this point like $7. But anyway, he's getting 7%, and it's like highest owned Washington Wizards player on the team today. Gafford's 4,800, not exactly expensive, but do you see any good tournament spots? Because if you're playing these Washington players, it's likely going to be in GPPs.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's tournaments only. To me, Porzingis is the most interesting guy. That price tag's down to 8,900. He has power forward eligibility. He's only pulling 5% ownership right now. It's certainly not a priority, but he's a very good point per minute guy. He's likely to give you 33, 34 minutes here. He's just going to look like a very high upside play. So I do think he's interesting. He's the guy in the dummy crunch I just ran showing up the most from Washington, but even that was, coming in at like 8 or 9%. So nothing crazy there, but I think probably just going a little bit under owned. Beal is fine. He's been good offensively this year. I think he's kind of gotten a bad rap because he hasn't been as good a DFS option, but obviously that's what we care about is the DFS playability. And he's not playing as many minutes this year as he has in the past. You can only really expect him to play like 32 minutes at this point. Maybe that ramps up sooner than later, but I don't think that they really want to unless they have to. The usage is down a little bit, still has about a 27% usage rate. So it's a decent price point for a good offensive player, but it's also pretty much in line with what you can expect from him. Gafford in tournaments, I think is fine, but there's just so many good center plays today that I don't think he's really a priority.
All right, let's get into some more interesting spots here. It's kind of funny because you got a bunch of these West Coast teams playing on the East Coast today, so we're talking about them first, which I think is helpful given how you and I can run into some time constraints later in these shows. Sacramento and Indy, Kings 3-point favorites, 235.5 total. De'Aaron Fox out of this one. So let me set it up to you like this and have you run through this a little bit. So 3 games that Mitchell and Sabonis have played together without De'Aaron Fox this year. Davion Mitchell is averaging 8 potential assists per game in those games. Not bad, right? 8, not bad. Sabonis is averaging like 15. I mean, I think it's 16 as a matter. He has 47 potential assists in 3 games. We know that with De'Aaron Fox off the floor, Davion Mitchell is going to be a pretty popular dead min, not a good per minute guy. And I still think, obviously, reason to talk about him and get to him at the bare minimum, who's going to have some opportunities. But Domantas Sabonis really benefits in a spot like this against the Pacers.
Yeah, I mean, so the weird thing with Sabonis is that his rates actually aren't that different without Fox on the floor compared to with him on. He's at 1.32 DraftKings points per minute when he has shared the floor with Fox this year. He's at 1.35 without Fox on the floor. But one thing to keep in mind, and I had sort of mentioned it when talking about Mitchell this morning, somebody pointed it out to me on Twitter as well. In the 3 games that Fox has been out this year, it was like Miami, Cleveland, and the Knicks or something. It was 3 just slow, unappealing teams. So overall this year, Domantas Sabonis played 542 minutes. It was
that, by the way, Miami, Cleveland, and Knicks. Yep.
Okay. So he's played 542 minutes without Fox on the floor. 113 were in those 3 games. So 21% of that total is from those 3 very unappealing matchups. It just makes sense, logically that over a larger sample, you would see a bump in production for Sabonis. And then it makes sense too, if you just look deeper into it and consider that a nice chunk of those minutes that you're referring to came against those 3 teams, not to mention whatever other mediocre matchups he's had throughout the year. So in a matchup against Indiana, you certainly project him to produce at a higher rate than that. The minutes should be there. Sabonis looks like a clear top play today, even with center only eligibility. He looks fantastic. Davion Mitchell, 3K with point guard and shooting guard eligibility. He's just going to be really easy to fit into lineups. The problem, he's likely to play 28 to 30 minutes. He's like a 0.65 fantasy point per minute guy with Domantas Sabonis on the floor and Fox off. You're not excited about him, but he just opens up a lot being exactly minimum salary. I think he's going a little bit over owned, but still about a 15% chance of being optimal. Malik Monk looks interesting in tournaments. I don't think you can count on him playing huge minutes. He's still only averaged 22 minutes per game in those 3 games without Fox. But if he plays well, you know that you can get more. He's a high upside, high usage guy. He is up to 4,800, so that's keeping the ownership down around 18%, whereas normally it would be a lot higher. But I like getting to him in tournaments. And then you get to the wings that just all, at the very least, look marginally better. Without Fox on the floor, you're at 0.94 DraftKings points per minute for Herter, 0.82 for Barnes, 0.76 for Murray. So nothing like exceptional that stands out there. But the one thing that I do like is I think it just gives them a little bit easier path to having a ceiling game, because when Fox and Sabonis are both in, there's just never really going to be a game where they both defer to Harrison Barnes or Kevin Herter. Maybe they can just, like, obviously there are going to be games where they shoot better than average from 3, but you're not going to get a game where they just stand to the side and let those guys step up. With Fox out and being replaced by a zero offensively in Davion Mitchell, it does open the door for Malik Monk or Kevin Herter or Harrison Barnes to really step up as that secondary scorer. So even though on average, maybe you don't see that happen and it kind of balances out, within any one given game, it does make the path a little bit easier to just get a big game from those guys.
Yeah, that's a great point. I mean, you're talking about a near 30% usage rate from De'Aaron Fox this season, and Davion Mitchell with what 14%, probably lower in the starting lineup. So yeah, that does not look good from a usage standpoint. But like you said, yes, you could definitely see that dispersed out or throughout the rest of the lineup with some actual decent shooters. We got a $28 super chat from Could Be Travis. Thanks, man. Canadian dollars. I work construction, but I'm not outside because I'm a tower crane operator. I used to build high-rise buildings. Now I'm building a battleship for the U.S. Marines. All right, man.
That's pretty cool. So is a tower crane operator like the crazy person that I'm talking about that I see climbing up to the crane that's above my building in the morning?
That's what I'm wondering. Yeah, like the ones on the top of the buildings. I don't know. Let us know, because that's
like the one outside my building. Like, it's a crane, but there's just like basically like a scaffolding going up with like just a ladder, and they climb the ladder up to what is like basically the 18th or 20th, what's the equivalent of like the 20th floor. And then they sit in their little room and operate the crane.
I think I'd rather be outside.
I would absolutely rather be. I couldn't physically climb that thing. Like, my body would stop working.
Have you sometimes, just to make myself uncomfortable, I'll turn on the YouTube videos of the cell phone tower technicians. I'll have to send them. Have you ever seen those?
No, but watching like even those videos where the people like do the crazy shit like on balconies and stuff.
Yeah, like the urban climbing and stuff.
Yeah, it makes me really uncomfortable to watch.
It makes your stomach kind of turn.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I watch it anyway because there's something about it that's, I mean, don't get me wrong, I've also searched for, ones that have gone wrong, but they seem to
I'm sure you have. I don't doubt that at all.
They seem to have wiped them. Yeah.
No, I mean, for me, like, it's enough of an adrenaline rush if I just like stand at like my window and as close as I can and like look down.
Right. Like, what if this window breaks? What if I somehow lose? I know. Yeah. I get it.
Like I'm impressed with myself if I like actually like put 2 hands on my balcony railing and like stand.
So you have a real heights thing.
Yeah, I don't mess with heights.
Well, thanks for the super chat, Travis. I'm going to send you that. You have to watch this video of the cell phone tower. It's nuts. And he's free climbing too. No harness, no straps, nothing. Happy Friday. Who's your favorite low-owned stud? All right. Yeah. Do you have a low-owned stud? I know we're only on the second game, but do you have one that you like today?
So I'm trying to, I don't know ownership off the top of my head, but so just kind of looking at what I'd be getting to right now. I mean, Sabonis obviously is not low owned. I want to say Şengün, but I also know I'm not really getting there. So I guess I can't really go with that.
It's kind of tough because a lot of the guys up top,
the guys that I like are the good players that I like are all getting ownership.
Exactly. And of course that's the case because there's so many of these 3K guys pulling ownership as well. Like LaMelo's at 22%, Sabonis 26%, and Embiid. The only like low owned, really high priced options today are Tatum, Sabonis.
Sabonis is 27%.
It's Edwards. I'm sorry, Edwards. Yeah. I was just reading down the list. Tatum and Edwards, really.
Yeah, and I mean Şengün at 9K is not getting ownership, but like again, I'm not really getting there either. So like I don't know, it's a tricky question because my answer would just be any of those guys by default. But like of the pay up guys that I like, even Trae Young's pulling 16% ownership, Dame's pulling 17. So there's not really one that exists that I actually like and think is going on their own.
So we got news that Haliburton is available to play. So
where's his ownership at? Because I do actually like him.
Tyrese?
So right now he's projected for 4% ownership. I don't know if that'll come up or not. If he's playing, I think he's playing full minutes in a really good spot and a good play.
It has to come up.
But like there is obviously risk, so it probably keeps the ownership down at least a little bit.
I mean, he returned from injury yesterday, played 36 minutes.
Yeah, and the general impression I'd gotten coming into that game was that he wasn't going to be heavily limited. I got the impression that they basically waited until he was good to go because Carlisle had said that, he was playing and that he didn't know if he'd be able to play his normal minutes. There wasn't like, oh, we're limiting him or anything like that. It was just like, yeah, we're going to see what happens. So like it wasn't shocking he played that much yesterday. And then the fact that he's playing today, I assume that he's just playing full minutes. Why
play him on the second leg of a back-to-back if you're going to limit him?
Right. And like Josh and I talked about this morning too, if they were going to limit him on one end or not play him on one end, I have to imagine that he would have been asking to play full minutes today and not yesterday.
Yeah. So yeah, I don't think he'll stay at 4%, but I'm not sure how much higher he gets. Like if he's basically the same price as LaMelo, a few $100s cheaper, and LaMelo's pulling 22%, and so many of these other high price guys, I'm not sure how much room there is for Haliburton to get popular.
Right, because you have to keep in mind that there is risk there. Like if he plays 32 or 33 minutes and Dame plays 38 and, Trae Young plays 36, you're going to just want those guys instead of him. So, like in the dummy crunch I ran just now, I got to like 8% Haliburton. We have him at 4%. So I like him and Porzingis, I guess, would actually be the answers to me where I was getting like twice the field on them.
What else do you want to do with the Pacers then? Now that we know Haliburton's in.
Yeah, so now that we know Haliburton is in, it does make everything else at least a little bit riskier, but there is still stuff to like because this is a very, very appealing game to get to. Neither team plays much defense. Neither team or both teams, play at a relatively fast pace. Nesmith's the only guy really pulling ownership. He's 3,600. I get it. You can't expect him to do what he did yesterday. You also can't expect the same 35, 36 minutes because he was just playing out of his mind, knocking down 3 after 3. Mathurin only played 20 minutes yesterday. So you're probably going to see it sort of even out where Nesmith and Mathurin both play like 26 to 28 minutes on average, but he's still $3,600 and he's not a terrible point per minute guy. He's not good, but 0.75, 0.8 fantasy points per minute for Nesmith. So I think he's going over owned and the ownership concerns me, but he's also just a good point per dollar value. As far as the rest of the Pacers, though, I think they're all just sort of interesting tournament options to plug in here and there to be contrarian. You have Haliburton that we just talked about pulling 4% ownership. We have him with about a 7% chance of being optimal. Buddy Hield played 36 minutes yesterday, which was interesting. I'd expected him to lose more minutes, but he didn't. Instead, they just barely played Chris Duarte. Him and O'Shea Brissett both played fewer than 10 minutes yesterday. So if they're going to continue running Hield out there for 34 to 36 minutes, there is upside for him at 6,500. If you want to try and pivot away from Nesmith, but stay with, a cheap guy, taking some shots at Andrew Nembhard is fine. He's essentially non-existent when Tyrese Haliburton is playing, but in one game against the Kings, obviously you can still get lucky and he's getting 1/3 the ownership. So Miles Turner, another center option, only 0.2%. So outside of Nesmith, there's nothing that looks like a piece I would get a lot of here. But there are very high upside plays that I like as contrarian pieces in individual lineups.
Talk about Charlotte and Detroit. What do you think the line is on this game?
Charlotte at Detroit by like 4.
Okay. Detroit -1 at home in this spot. 240 total. Charlotte Hornets, though, playing their second of a back-to-back today on the road. LaMelo, very popular. The minutes have been through the roof lately. Are your thoughts on him and your exposure, depending, I don't know if you've crunched lineups yet, but is that in line with what we're seeing as far as ownership goes?
Yeah. He showed up in like 18% of what I just ran before the show. And those aren't lineups that I'd be like playing in a tournament. It's just kind of seeing with a little bit of randomness, just how often guys are showing up for me. So yeah, I think the ownership on him makes sense. Probably a slight bump for him without Hayward, although, Hayward's still been a low usage guy this year, but Jalen McDaniels is a lower usage guy. So Oh, sorry. Hayward's not on the injury report. I'd assumed he was going to be out, but he's not. So either way, though, LaMelo looks good. What I was going to say was that it's not much of a difference either way. So LaMelo looks good. There's nothing else really that stands out, though. Like with Hayward playing, you aren't going to get McDaniels in the starting lineup, so I'm not looking to go there. Still don't really want to get the Hayward at 5,300. Rozier's up to 8K. Mason Plumlee is always fine in tournaments, but there's a bunch of centers today. It's basically LaMelo and just move on from the Hornets for me.
Yeah, and that's what the boom bust tool, that's what ownership is showing right now. All of that would suggest exactly what you're saying. Now, on the other side with Detroit, you're talking about a team that isn't really all that popular either. Alec Burks at 5,100, Jalen Duren 5,400. These guys are all, honestly, like all of them are in a similar price point. There isn't a single player on this team that's, expensive anymore. If anything, it's just like lower mid-range and a Bojan Bogdanovic or something like that. But I mean, it is, and this is why normally we could just be like, oh yeah, they're all okay. Low own single digit plays, but it is a good matchup. It could be one of those games where there's just a ton of scoring, 240 total and very little ownership because it's kind of hard to differentiate with a team like Detroit in many cases. Do you think there's good tournament value here?
I think the whole team is like good tournament value, but there's not one individual guy that is like a great play.
That's what I'm saying. Yeah.
Alec Burks pulling the most ownership at 12%. Assuming he starts, I think he's actually going a little bit under owned, nothing crazy, but he showed up around 14% of the time for me at 5,100, probably playing, 29, 30 minutes if he starts. Killian Hayes right now is only pulling 2.5% ownership. He showed up around 6 or 7% for me. We got a weird rotation last game because Jaden Ivey was in foul trouble. And so Hayes benefited from that. But you also had a different first half rotation where Alec Burks played with Killian Hayes with the second unit. If they're going to play them alongside each other for some set of minutes, then you can get a situation where, Burks plays 30 and Hayes plays like 25, 26 instead of it being 30 and 18 or 28 and 20 or something like that. And Hayes is cheap now too. Not a bad point per minute guy. Jaden Ivey going a little bit overlooked, I think. Not somebody that I'm building around, but he's showing up 6 to 7% of the time for me at 2% owned. Bogdanovic showing up for me around 11 to 12% at 9% owned. So it's just a bunch of guys that, because of the matchup, because of the game environment, I like using them as the low-owned guy in a tournament lineup. There's not one guy, though. Like, I'm not going into the slate saying, like, oh, I'm just going to play 40% Jaden Ivey today because that's where, like, there's a huge edge on this slate. I can't believe people aren't playing them. I understand why they're not playing them. I just think that right now, pretty much this entire team, whether that is Hayes or Ivey or Duren, Duren's about where he should be, but like Bogdanovic, Burks, they're all just projected to be, a couple points lower in ownership than I think that they should be.
For sure. We got 3 down, 5 to go here, making decent time. Got through a couple interesting spots. Another interesting spot. You want to take advantage of overlay. You want to take advantage of $100 first match deposit bonus. You want to take advantage of the free tools that are absolute necessities over at Stokastic, and take advantage of No House Advantage. Just came up with that one on the No House Advantage show today, trying it out here on the Deeper Dive. But in all seriousness, lots of overlay over at No House Advantage. 5K to first right now. What are we at? Let's see. 5K to first in the slam dunk. My guess is it's nowhere close. It locks at 7 o'clock. You're just picking lineups. All you're doing is picking player props with no juice on either side, just the over or the under. And in doing so, you're building lineups with that. No salary cap. The ones you like the most go at the top. They get the most points. So like you'll have a 10-pointer, a 9-pointer, an 8, 7, all the way down to 1. The one you're least confident in is your 1-pointer. The one you like the most is 10. For me, Damian Lillard today has a prop on No House Advantage. And by the way, it is 16% filled with less than an hour and a half to go. Damian Lillard as a prop, where you take the over-under right now, this would be my 10 spot, of 24.5. And if you're thinking, is that any good? Well, we haven't projected over 33. His point prop on traditional books is sitting at 34.5. So there's so many ways to use these tools. Like what I like to do is I'll use the free tools at Stokastic, and then I'll say, okay, well, where are the best spots? Find the best spots. You just sort by odds for the under or the over with our projections and with the line. And then I'll do a little bit further digging and find the ones I like the most. I mean, shit, dude, the overlay combined with the deposit match bonus up to $100, combined with the free tools at Stokastic that you'll never have to pay for. It's an awesome place to play. And listen, say you play there every day where you're getting this type of overlay, it's just going to pay for itself, even if you don't bink anytime soon. DraftKings, FanDuel, those, we love them, but you're not getting that type of overlay anywhere. So check it out. The link is in the description. The link is in chat. If No House Advantage is available to you, and it should be, check it out. Use the tools, get the first match deposit bonus, and get in on that overlay. Link in the description and in the chat. All right, let's keep this one rolling here. Next up on the list, Adam, you got the Phoenix Suns, Boston Celtics. This is where it gets interesting because there's still no Devin Booker, Cameron Payne, Landry Shamet, and now we found out right around 3:30, right when Neil and I started the No House Advantage strategy show at 3:30 Eastern, that Cameron Johnson is out as well. So you're looking at guys like Josh Okogie. You're talking about Damian Lee. You're talking about Dario Saric. How do you see this breaking down, and what do you think the starting lineup looks like? Because this is a really important spot, even though it's against a tough matchup in Boston.
Yeah, it is a really important spot because it does open up value. My expectation is that Dario Saric replaces Cameron Johnson in the starting lineup, probably plays around like 21 minutes. At his price tag, it makes him look okay. Right now, we have him at no ownership, but I think that changes if he starts. I think he should be probably around like 10, 11% owned, assuming he's starting at 3,500. Josh Okogie, we have pulling 28% ownership at 3K. That is way too high unless he's starting. If he's starting, then sure, play 3K Josh Okogie, shooting guard, small forward, good point per minute guy, even though it's a tough matchup. But assuming he's coming off the bench, you're likely getting around 20 minutes or so from him. If he plays well, he could get a little bit more, but there's no guarantee he's getting 24, 25 minutes, anything like that. So I do expect that ownership to come down. I think he should also be around like 7 to 10% owned, somewhere in there, assuming he's coming off the bench. But it does open up value for those guys. Probably around 10% for me is where I think he should be. Damian Lee, not too exciting. He's a little bit more difficult to get to, I think, just being $300 more than Okogie, not being as good a point per minute guy. So he's showing up in like 3 to 4% of lineups for me. So I think Okogie, Lee, Saric are all more appealing than they would be if Cam Johnson was out or if Cam Johnson was in. But assuming Saric starts, I don't love any of these guys. I think it's more so just, mixing in some Saric and some Okogie where you need value.
Yeah, because the rest of the team doesn't look all that great today.
No, I mean, I like the idea of Chris Paul in tournaments at 3% ownership. This is an $8,200 price tag where people were just jamming him in 40, 45% of the time up until basically last game. Last game, he was wildly, wildly disappointing. And then also the game blew out. But, you have a difficult matchup here. I understand why he's not more popular, but he is another guy that I think just should be, 5, 6% owned instead of 2 or 3. So it's a good differentiation play, but nothing I'm going crazy with. Same goes for DeAndre Ayton. I think this is probably the least appealing game on the slate overall. But from the Phoenix side, mostly my exposure is just going to be taking flyers on some combination of Okogie and Saric, most likely.
Yeah, because on the other side, I mean, I know Marcus Smart is still sidelined for the foreseeable future, but you and I touched on it briefly with that super chat earlier, talking about some of the low-owned studs. Jason Tatum, 4%, Jaylen Brown, 3%, but it's hard to get to those guys when you've got like a Sabonis going up against Indy. You've got Dame in that matchup against Washington. Just like a ton of fast-paced, projected high-scoring games, good overall matchups. As you like to say, casualties of the slate kind of feels like that's Boston from top to bottom today.
Yeah, medium projections aren't everything, but they are, a big part of how you're going to approach DFS. And you can just very quickly look and understand why Tatum's not more popular here when he's $11,000. So he's the second most expensive guy behind Joel Embiid, but he has the 5th highest projection on the slate behind Embiid, Sabonis, Lillard, and LaMelo. So you can just see right there, like how it's going to be difficult to prioritize him, because even when you factor in range of outcomes and the massive ceiling that Tatum has, it's not like everyone else around him doesn't also have a massive ceiling. And there's just so many cheaper guys that have similar upside to Tatum. It makes it difficult to get there. Same kind of thing with Jaylen Brown. When you look at the players that are projected around him in terms of medium projection, It's more so, it's a lot of guys that are similarly priced, like Porzingis, like Şengün, like Kyle Kuzma. But then you also have, DeJounte Murray, similarly priced for less money. You have Lauri Markkanen, who's projected for 4 more points than Brown, who's less expensive. You have Van Vliet projected for more points at a cheaper salary. So it just becomes difficult to prioritize either guy. I think that, you're never wrong getting to them in tournaments, but it's just going to be tough. I think Brown's probably the easier one to get to just because you're not paying the second highest salary on the slate for him. But there's just nothing that really looks like a priority for me here. Robert Williams is interesting. I think he's going a bit underowned. He's my favorite play from Boston, honestly. 5,400, only played about 19 or 20 minutes last game in the blowout. But if this game's competitive, you're likely getting around 27, 28 minutes from him. We know he's a high upside option, but there's just nothing that stands out here. I will say Williams is my favorite option from Boston, though.
Okay. Well, let's keep it moving then. That makes it easier. Also, 366 likes. Just to be sure here, Mike, Adam, you get in that? You get in there yet?
Yeah, I did.
All right. Boys doing your role. 367. That must have been Mike. Mike, I can't get past me, pal. But hey, that means that 16% of you have hit that thumbs up. 84% of you wonderful people haven't atoned for your sins yet. Take a single second. Take a single second to atone and help us appease the YouTube overlords here. And we need 117 to crush 500. We still have 20 minutes to go. We'll get there. But I'd like to make this expedient so I don't have to ask again and you don't have to hear it. It helps us. Otherwise, I wouldn't ask you. I promise you that much. Helps us keep the lights on around this joint. So take a second, be kind with your seconds here and give us that thumbs up. We'll keep going. Orlando, Minnesota. So the Magic 4.5-point dogs, 229.5 total against the Timberwolves. Healthy team right now, but Banchero, dude, popular today. What am I missing with this $6,800 price point on him?
What do you mean? What are you missing?
I'm saying it seems like I feel like he should be at least a little bit. Maybe he shouldn't be more expensive in this spot. But I mean, the ownership would suggest that this is a pretty damn good price point on him.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I didn't know if you meant what are you missing? Why is he popular, or what are you missing? Why is he so cheap?
No, I'm saying I feel like he should be a little bit more expensive.
I think he should as well. You have seen his production, his rates come down a little bit just as this team's gotten healthier, having to contend with Markelle Fultz and Franz Wagner and Cole Anthony. And now you have Jalen Suggs playing more minutes as well. But still, a high upside guy at relatively weak positions, going a bit over-owned at 26%, but he is a good play. It's just a matter of, you have to differentiate elsewhere. I do not understand the Jalen Suggs ownership. He played 26 minutes last game. Keep in mind, that was a game where Jonathan Isaac was out. And while that's not a huge deal, that is 10 minutes that are disappearing here, not necessarily from Suggs, but from some combination of this team. But also Cole Anthony only played 18 minutes. So on the one hand, it's nice to see Jalen Suggs get 26 minutes. You know that he can do it. If he were getting, 2-3% ownership here, I'd be pretty interested at 3,600. But if he's going to be 14% owned just because he played 26 minutes last game in a game where Cole Anthony and Jonathan Isaac combined for 18 minutes, I am fine just going elsewhere and hoping that doesn't burn me. So I don't get the ownership there. I think Banchero is going over-owned, but I get it. Wendell Carter Jr., Franz Wagner both look good. Wagner, 6K, shooting guard, small forward. I like that. Wendell Carter looks like he's getting correct ownership as well. Center only is tough, but 5,800 is a cheap price tag when you should get around 30 minutes from him. Markelle Fultz is getting a bit less ownership. I don't have any issues with that either. So I think that, those are the 5 guys that are projected for ownership here. The only one that I really just can't figure out at all is Jalen Suggs.
Well, on the other side, and by the way, Davion Mitchell confirmed starting. Drew Eubanks confirmed starting as well, for those of you who are waiting to get confirmation on that. So Rudy Gobert questionable again. I mean, I guess the assumption is he plays. He sat out with that soreness last game. But if he plays, that's one thing. Because especially now, like you've got Anthony Edwards about to crack $10,000. Relatively tougher team to get to. But if he's out, Rudy Gobert is out. I know that Naz Reid's price point has climbed since the last time we talked about him. And of course, the last time we talked about him, this dude went for 52 in 35 minutes. And on the season, from a per minute perspective, he's what? like 1.2 fantasy points per minute, 4,800 would still feel like an excellent place to get to on Naz Reid if Gobert sits. I don't care if he came up $1,000.
Yeah, and also power forward eligible. And the thing to keep in mind with him coming up $1,000 is that his price tag had inexplicably dropped to 3,800.
Yeah, right.
It had slowly been climbing because of Gobert missing a couple of games, but then it just like went into free fall mode to the point where Reed was like borderline playable as the backup to Gobert. He had gotten so cheap. So that price tag coming up just doesn't really matter. Power forward eligible. If he were center, then yeah, you'd have the opportunity cost. But if he ends up starting this game in place of Gobert, you're just going right back to him. There's foul risk. He fouls a good amount. Would have cost him a bit last game as well. Would, played 30 minutes in regulation. But the other thing to keep in mind with him is when he's not in foul trouble, they've shown time and time again that you're getting like 32 to 36 minutes. It's not like they're going out there with the plan of him playing 26 to 28. So you really do have a very, very high ceiling, not just from a points per minute standpoint where he's at 1.15 DraftKings points for the season, but also from a playing time standpoint, if he does manage to avoid fouling. So I will be playing him pretty much everywhere if Gobert is out and not playing him at all if Gobert is in. If Gobert is in, I think the ownership on him is more or less correct, coming in around 8%. He is relatively inexpensive at 6,800. It is a pretty good spot. It's just tough on this slate because you have Sabonis as a clear priority. You have Embiid that you're going to want to get to. Mm-hmm. You have a number of other really good centers. Like I think I've already mentioned 5 or 6 where it's just like, oh, these guys are 5% owned. I like them, but also, if I just say I'm going to play all of them, I have to start not playing Sabonis and Embiid, which I don't really want to do either. So, he's just another good tournament play if he's in. Same can be said for Russell or Anthony Edwards. None of these guys pulling a lot of ownership. All of them, high usage, high ceiling guys. Russell and Edwards in particular.
You could always just start doing the analysis where you say like, yeah, he could get there, he might not get there. Right. He's okay. He might.
Yeah, I like that guy. And then when I see the winning tournament lineup tonight, I can tell everyone that I was
right.
You're
on him. Yeah, exactly. Cover your bases. Exactly. It's the way some people do it. All right. Do you want to get to anything else for Minnesota?
This slate's weird. Like you just have like clear cut good priorities, and then a bunch of teams like Minnesota where it's just like, yeah, their whole team's good in tournaments. I think D'Angelo Russell should be like 10% owned instead of 7. Cool, but that also doesn't mean I'm just going to start jamming him into like every lineup or something.
Yeah. All right. Well, we got 3 games to go, making good time. We'll turn this one over to Live Before Lock after this. Who do we got up? Is it Greg and Neil again? Yeah. All right. Greg Ehrenberg, Neil Orfield coming up next. They're taking you up and through lock with No House Advantage post-lock show going till 7:30. So stick around for that. Also, I'll wait on that, actually. I'll wait. I'll spare you guys. Toronto at Houston. Toronto 7.5-point favorites here. Well, I guess we could start with Fred VanVleet, right? This guy coming off of a absolutely gigantic game last time out. I mean, monster performance for Fred VanVleet. 34 point, 10 rebound, 10 assist, a 12 rebound, 10 assist, triple-double in 38 minutes. Under Nick Nurse, these guys constantly playing huge minutes, all of the starters almost. What do you think about him today? North of 8K, which is where he has been, but he's playing pretty damn good basketball, not just that last game, but in general.
Yeah, no, I like him a lot here. And that probably means he's going to have a terrible game because I really don't know if I've gotten this guy right like his entire career. But going back to like the Kyle Lowry days, the only times VanVleet would play well is if I had a lot of Lowry, you would see VanVleet just bringing the ball up the floor and Lowry standing in the corner.
Yeah. You probably had a ton of him in that series against the Sixers where he had like 0 points every game. And then the next series had none of him where he was like the MVP.
That sounds right. That has been VanVleet basically his entire career. But the thing that does stand out that makes me not think this is just like chasing points is we've seen a reduction in Pascal Siakam's rates recently. And that it's not like that's shocking because if you remember at the beginning of the year, the big issue with VanVleet, the minutes were going to be there, but his rates across the board were down because Pascal Siakam was doing everything. In the last 30 days, Toronto's played 15 games. Or VanVleet's played 15 games with Siakam, 23.5% usage rate, 30.7% assist percentage in 37.5 minutes per game, 1.25 DraftKings points per minute. In those same games, Siakam, in the ones that he's played with VanVleet, so in those 15 games, He's only produced 1.05 DraftKings points per minute. His usage rate is down to 26%. His assist percentage is down to 19.9. You'll remember early in the season, you were talking about an approaching 30% usage and approaching 30% assist percentage for Siakam. So I don't know if VanVleet was just banged up earlier in the season. I don't know if Siakam's banged up now. I don't know what the reason is, but basically you've just seen it level out to what we had seen in previous years where Siakam is still good. But at this point, he's still really expensive. And VanVleet's salary is still just rising because he was bad for so much of this year. But he's playing a lot better now. It's obviously a good matchup. I like getting right back to VanVleet.
Yeah, he's been on a tear. And what's exciting about someone like VanVleet is he's 8,300, but he does still have considerable upside here. I mean, he's got 360 plus games in like his last 10. So going up against the Houston Rockets, you could definitely see a big game materializing for him. And of course for Siakam. We'll get to Houston in a second, still without Kevin Porter, Jalen Green. And there could be some other absences there as well today. But do you have anything else on Toronto before we turn the page?
Siakam's obviously good. I think if he's going to be 13% owned, I'm not going to get as much of him just because he is center only on DraftKings. Obviously on FanDuel where he's power forward, it's a little bit easier to get to. Barnes and Trent are interesting in tournaments as well. Precious Achiuwa's salary has come up. He only played 25 minutes last game. We got a little bit deeper bench rotation from Toronto with Banton and Flynn combining for like 15 minutes. Koloko played 9. So I don't know that you're definitely getting 25 minutes again from Achiuwa. He could easily play 32 or 33, but center only with the rising price tag and the somewhat concerning rotation last time out, I have a hard time really getting to much of him. VanVleet to me is the priority. Siakam, great, but I do think he's going a little bit overowned. And then Barnes and Trent, just to round out lineups in a good matchup makes sense.
All right. On to Houston. So Jabari Smith Jr. is still questionable, right? I haven't seen anything on his status.
Yeah, last I've seen.
Porter,
as of the last injury report, yes.
Yeah. Kevin Porter's out. We already know that. Jalen Green is out. Eason, man, how do you even put that into, like, how do you comprehend that stat line from last game? 20, 13, an assist, 5 stocks, and almost 50 fantasy points in 19 minutes.
You saw the play, right? Or the series of plays, right?
Yeah.
It's
I saw Josh in chat the other day talking about how fluky it was and everything, but I mean, that's absurd.
Yeah. I mean, obviously that's insane. Like you're never playing somebody expecting that to happen. Tari Eason is a good point per minute guy. He's somebody that when he was reasonably priced, you could play at low ownership and hope to get lucky because he can do it. Now that his price tag's up to 5,800, to me, it's pretty much as simple as if Jabari Smith plays, zero interest in Tari Eason. The thing, like you have people that played him last game for whatever reason at 5,400 and are convinced that it was a good play. You can go back and look. The guy played 19 minutes. Like if Jabari Smith's in, he's playing 19 to 20 minutes, and there's just no reason you should be playing him at this salary. If Jabari Smith is out, though, you're probably getting Easton starting, playing north of 30, and being a phenomenal play. So he's, to me, just entirely dependent on Jabari Smith, similarly to how Naz Reid's entirely dependent on Rudy Gobert. Like you're either not playing him or you're playing a ton of him, depending on if the guy ahead of him is ruled out or not.
Right. And I mean, Daishen Nix, that guy, he played 30 plus minutes last game. He's getting around 11%. I think he had a stat line that was kind of to be expected. He's cheap. His per minute production has been bad this year. It's not the greatest matchup against Toronto. Do you still see yourself getting back them a little bit, just given the position and the absences and the sub 4K price point?
At current ownership, I don't really like it. I think if the ownership came down, I'd be more interested. Not a very good fantasy point per minute guy, like you said. Did play 32 minutes last game. Could play 26, 27 today. Who knows? But I think he's okay as a value. I just think he's going a little bit overowned.
Anybody else you like for Houston today? We did talk a little bit about Şengün.
Yeah, I mean, I've mentioned it a couple times. I think 1 to 2% owned Şengün is really, really interesting just because he's like a 1.4 fantasy point per minute guy, likely to play around 34 minutes. The problem is just that he's center only, and it becomes really, really difficult to prioritize getting there. So it's another guy that is projected for, 1 to 2% ownership, and I'm getting like 4 or 5%. So yeah, like maybe I'll be over the field, but it's not going to be anything crazy. That's how I feel about Jabari Smith and Eric Gordon as well. Gordon does see a nice bump without Porter and Jalen Green, but it's just, difficult to really prioritize him on this slate. I think he's going a little bit under owned, but nothing really crazy.
Mike, by the way, talking about that Eason sequence from the other day, see if you can find the Kenneth Faried sequence from however many years ago and throw it up on the screen. Guy had to have had like 12 rebounds going for the put. You remember how good of an offensive rebounder that guy was? He was an absolute motor out
Faried,
there.
yeah.
What's that?
Faried?
Yeah.
Do you know what Tari Eason is shooting at the rim this year?
After that last sequence, I'm going to say it's low, but I'm assuming
it was low before.
Opposite. What?
It was low before, but that didn't help.
What's he shooting at? Where are you looking this up, by the way?
Dunks and threes.
Okay. So at the rim or within 3 feet? We're talking like at the rim?
Okay. It's however they define it. I'm not sure.
And that's why I was asking, because so many of them define it differently, like within 3 feet. Anyway, it doesn't matter. What is it?
52%.
What?
9th percentile.
Dude, that's horrible.
That is incredibly bad. It was 53 going into last game.
It was so bad that didn't even drop it.
Right. Yeah. Like very, very good. 94th percentile in offensive rebounding. I'm sure that came up a little bit last game, but it was really good anyway. 96th percentile in steal percentage, 82nd in block percentage, 95th percentile in defensive EPM, 50th percentile in offensive EPM, 9th percentile in field goal percentage at the rim. Just horrible offensive.
Jeez.
Yeah.
That's crazy. Charles said Kenneth Faried was nice, just couldn't stay healthy. It was that, and teams just didn't. There was some, I never really got to the bottom of what it was about him. You and I have talked about it a lot. Like, remember certain like organizations just didn't want to play him.
Well, I mean, he was like, I don't remember what the alternatives were. I don't remember who they played over him, but it was just one of those, like, he was like a miniature Andre Drummond where all he can do is play, rebound, play around the rim, but then he's also undersized.
Yeah. Big time undersized. But he had an amazing motor on him. Like, he was fun to watch.
Yeah.
Really fun to watch.
Didn't he like sign with the G League squad this year at some point?
Yes. I remember seeing that. Yeah. Or it was like overseas. No, it was. Yeah.
I'm pretty sure it was a G League squad.
It's hard to keep track because during the COVID years, remember there were people like literally being exhumed from the grave and brought back to life to come play basketball. Yeah. Like Greg Monroe had a legitimate role on a team during COVID. And we were rostering Greg Monroe during the COVID years. There were a lot.
On November 11th, 2022, Faried was claimed by the Austin Spurs. On December 13th, he was waived. Now he's apparently playing in Mexico, it looks like.
Damn. Okay. No, I think there were some behavioral things with Kenneth Faried too. I could be wrong.
I thought he had a reputation of being like a really good guy.
I thought, yes, but I think there was some like inner organizational dispute or something. I don't know. Okay. Someone could look it up and find it. I could be wrong. I thought I remember something. I don't know if it was Mike Malone or whatever it was, but I thought there was something else. Either way, unimportant. We got 2 games to go. You ready to close this one out?
Yep.
All right. Exactly, Keith. That's it. That's exactly what it was. Like, yeah, he was never stopped moving, even though he was undersized. But it could be a liability at times, of course. Philly at Sacramento. So the Philadelphia 76ers, we're still waiting on Joel Embiid, who I suppose this is just going to be a every single game thing for him. And then instead of just saying he's in, it's a game time decision. For now, we kind of just have to assume he's going to play, right?
Yeah, I mean, like Josh this morning was like, well, this is the spot where like you would think they're going to rest Embiid. But my counterpoint to that is the guy wants to beat out Jokic, and taking off games against the San Antonio Spurs is not how you boost your stats.
Yeah, I said the same thing on the second of a back-to-back the other day or whatever. Remember, we're like traveling home from a long road trip. Now they got Orlando.
Right.
That would have been a pretty good time too.
Yeah. So, I mean, at this point, I assume he's going to play until he doesn't, even though this is, one of the last games. It is only an 8:00 game. So maybe we get that news. Chances are at 7, we're going to get Doc Rivers saying that he's questionable and he's going to warm up. And then at 7:30, you'll find out. So if he's out, it certainly opens up a lot here. But assuming that he is in, he looks good. You do have, the opportunity cost at the position, but he's still showing up as the second best center play to me behind Sabonis. And he should just absolutely torch this San Antonio front court. If he's in, James Harden looks good as well. He should, I think, be pulling around 10% ownership. We right now have him projected for about 9% ownership. So pretty much where he should be. Other than that, I don't think there's much if Embiid is in. If you fall into a little bit of Tobias Harris at 6K, sure, it's a good matchup. If you want to hope that you get the 30-minute D'Anthony Melton game instead of the 20-minute D'Anthony Melton game at 1% owned, that's fine in large field tournaments, but nothing that I would, really be going crazy for. If Embiid is out, though, Harden becomes a clear priority. Harris looks a lot better. Melton looks better. Maxey looks better. Harrell looks fine at 4,500. So you do potentially get a lot of late swapping the Sixers if we get Embiid ruled out later.
Absolutely. We'll pay attention to that. And maybe Live Before Lock will have something for you. I want to keep this one moving, though, and you kind of just broke it down nicely because we have some super chats, and I want to tell you guys how to get a free month of Stokastic Plus Platinum. Everything, not just like literally everything on the site take 2 minutes of your time and $10. I'll tell you after this game. Also, appreciate you. Crushed 500 likes. Easy work. 2,600 plus people watching with us right now. Appreciate you guys making my life easier. I go downstairs, look the wife and kid in the eyes, and not feel shame now. San Antonio Spurs. Jeremy Sohan out. We have no who else is out? Jeremy Sohan. Trey Jones is out. That's significant here. So let's get into it. Not the best matchup for them. They're a shit team, but it doesn't really matter when you're talking from a DFS perspective.
Yeah, and they're pretty inexpensive as well. So there is certainly stuff to get to from San Antonio, which is terrifying. On the plus side, it means that you're going to have open spots to swap to when you get Embiid news. But we have 22.5% ownership coming into Josh Richardson right now. He started the second half last game with Trey Jones out. So I don't know if he'll start today. Typically they've liked bringing him off the bench, but they are also getting really shorthanded and they do need ball handlers now. So my expectation is that Richardson will start. He's actually been very good without Devin Vassell or Trey Jones on the floor this year, about 1.15 DraftKings points per minute without them on the floor. You can probably expect that to come down, 1.07 DraftKings points per minute without them on the floor. You can probably expect that to come down a little bit playing alongside a 30% usage Keldon Johnson. In 180 minutes with Johnson on and Vassell and Jones off, 0.91 DraftKings points per minute for Richardson. So still good, but a decrease in production as you would expect. Looks like a good option, probably going a little bit over owned, but nothing too crazy. Jakob Poeltl at 5,600, pulling 12% ownership. This guy's just one of the biggest wild cards because without Vassell on the floor this year, he's produced about 1.25 fantasy points per minute. But the playing time is just all over the place. He fouls a lot. The Spurs get blown out a lot, and that causes his average playing time to come down. But that also causes his price tag to come down. And when you get a competitive game where he's not in foul trouble, you can get 28 to 30 minutes like we saw last game. That's not always the case. We had a game recently, I think, against the Lakers where it was competitive. He wasn't in foul trouble, and you still only got like 22 minutes. But it's not like he's just incapable of playing close to 30 minutes. He's cheap. He's a good point per minute guy. It's also a really scary matchup. You have ownership coming into Zach Collins, which I think is weird. If Poeltl gets in foul trouble, Collins is going to look pretty good, but his price tag has come up. Like, I think if Daniel Gafford's starting, I'd rather just play Daniel Gafford at half the ownership of Collins if I'm going to that price point. Beyond those guys, Malachi Branham, 3,600, looks pretty good. I expect him to play mid to upper 20s tonight. He's a 0.73 fantasy point per minute guy. Keta Bates-Diop, not pulling much ownership at 2%. He's at 0.8 DraftKings points per minute without Vassell or Jones. Played 27 minutes last game. No real reason to think he's playing less today. So, I think, Richardson, Poeltl makes sense. But then also, if you're going to take some shots at Keldon Johnson, that's fine. I like Malachi Branham as a value option. I like Bates-Diop as a value option. I think both of those guys are going a bit under-owned.
No, first time, long time. I don't have a filter on my camera. He said I look more defined. I think I just look bad today, dude. I was out to lunch with my wife and the waitress comes up and she's like, you look really, and I was just going to be like, you look like someone who knows just because you look really tired.
Oh, man.
It's like, oh, all right. Appreciate you.
Would you rather a waitress come up to you and tell you look really tired or a waitress come up to you and tell you look like a spitting image of Davis Bertans?
Tired. I'm not the greatest looking guy out there, but far better looking than Davis Bertans. Okay, yeah, I'll take that to the grave, baby. Yeah. Oh, yeah. But yeah, she's just like, you looked, drew it out, really tired. Thanks. Thank you. What a nice thing to say. I mean, if you ever want to boost your tips, tell someone they look like shit before you give them the check. All right. One more game, and then we'll turn it over to Greg and Neil. Atlanta, Utah. I told you guys, BetMGM, link in the description and chat. Take 2 minutes after this slate locks and find $10. Put it on any bet because you're getting a free month of Stokastic Plus Platinum after that settles. It's $120 value. Like if you are rocking the Stokastic avatar, right? And you're trying to get in the Hall of Fame that we always do in between these shows. Yeah, look at that guy. What a goof. You're trying to get he looks like the kid from Problem Child, not me. You want to get in on all of that. You're like, hey, you finish top 3 in a field of 5,000 or more. You get the free month for Stokastic. You don't have to do that. Like, yeah, that's awesome. You should still rock the avatar because everyone wants to get inducted into the Hall of Fame. But if you have $10 and you can go over to BetMGM, put it on anything because when it settles, you're getting a free month. Every single tool on the site, every single sport, all these tools created by some of the best DFS players out there. Take advantage of it. It's a free month, $120 value. Bing, bang, boom, you're in. And if that first bet loses, $10, 50, 100, 1,000, up to $1,000, you get it all back in bonus bets. That's just a little icing on the cake right there. I mean, how do you not take advantage of it's such a no-brainer? Plus, we want you guys to win. That's why we do this. We want you to win. We want you to take advantage of the tools, get some winning lineups, bing some contests, so then you can stick around and you'll be in the Discord, you join the family, and you stay for a long time. This is our way of saying, try it out for $10, get in on it and stick around. So links in the description and in chat. And of course, must be 21 years or older to gamble. If you or someone you know has a gambling problem, please call or text 1-800-GAMBLER. All right, let's talk about Utah and Atlanta. We're up against it. So wrap this one up for me, Adam. A lot of interesting plays. So floor is yours, 242 total in this one.
Yeah, should be a high-scoring game. Two pretty healthy teams, but on Atlanta, you have ownership coming into DeJounte Murray and Trae Young. I think they both look pretty good, probably going a little bit over-owned, but that's typically what you're going to see when you're comparing optimal percentage to ownership because, you're not actually going to make the optimal lineup ever in NBA DFS. So it's not surprising to see them be a little bit over-owned, but still look like good options. From a tournament standpoint, Hunter, Capella, Collins all give you nice ceilings, but they're not pieces I'm prioritizing at all. On the other side for Utah, you have Lauri Markkanen still at that $8,400 price tag. He's another one where he looks like one of the better plays on the slate today. He's also pulling 27% ownership. So in individual lineups, if you want to pivot somewhere else, that's perfectly fine. But he's about a 1.2 fantasy point per minute guy, should give you 35 to 36 minutes. Behind him, you have Clarkson and Conley, who both should play 31 to 32 minutes. They're both pulling 12 to 16% ownership, which is fine. And then one really interesting spot is Kelly Olynyk. I mentioned him specifically in the notebook article that I put out earlier today as well. He played 15 minutes, and then he played 20 minutes in his last couple of games since returning. If you guaranteed that he played 24 or 25 minutes today, I'd be really interested in a 4K Kelly Olynyk. The problem is that he could just play like 20 to 22, and he's pulling 12% ownership. So I think he's going a little bit over-owned right now. It makes me not want to gamble on that quite as much as I would if he was getting, 2 or 3% ownership. Walker Kessler is center number like 100 on the list of very high upside centers that aren't getting ownership. The block upside alone just means he can win you a tournament any given slate, but it's just really difficult to prioritize him. Vanderbilt at 4,100, I think is a pretty interesting pivot to Kelly Olynyk. They project for similar minutes. Olynyk's getting like 3 times the ownership. I would just rather play Vanderbilt if I'm going that route.
All right. Very quickly, because we got to go. Spartan Mitch, welcome to Team Stokastic. Appreciate you, dude. Badge looks nice. Tim L, teams are now 50-plus games into the season. Would it be better to focus on their last 30 days fantasy points per minute or keep focusing on the season-long fantasy points per minute? You have a very quick answer for that, Adam?
Is it
just case by case?
I prefer season long just because it gives you a larger sample, but like also paying attention to trends. The reason I wouldn't want to go to 30 and just rely on it is a lot of times you're just dealing with, over a 30 game sample. This guy missed, there's a teammate that missed, 4 games in that stretch, right, and it's going to throw everything off. But like just paying attention to trends, like with the Van Vliet Siakam thing, it was something that I noticed earlier in the season where it was just like, all right, at some point, either Van Vliet is going to like get benched or he's going to start taking usage back. And then you see Van Vliet playing well. And it's like, all right, I wonder what's happened in the last 30 days. And you see things, have normalized. So I think if you're just going to look at one, it would be season, but also, if you wanted to kind of compare like a rolling 30 days and keep in mind, what teams have been healthy and which teams haven't and stuff like that.
All right. Avi, I'm going to have Greg and Neil hit that. Don't go anywhere. They'll get to that at the beginning of the show. Appreciate you guys. You're the best. Good luck. Have a great weekend. We'll see you back here on Monday for the deeper dive. Peace.
Let's go.
Yo, it's that time of week again. Time to induct all you fine people into the Hall of Fame. Give out some free months of Stokastic plus Platinum in the process. Some big winners this past week, so we're about to dive into it. Of course, all you got to do to get involved, get your name up here. Have us do the bragging for you. Get the free month of Stokastic and get inducted into the Hall of Fame right here on the Stokastic YouTube. Download the Stokastic profile picture, stokastic.com/avatar. Tweet your wins at Stokastic Hall of Fame, at Stokastic HOF. And get that free month. Just finish top 3 in a field of 5,000 or more, and we got you. Just like, how about Braden V coming in hot? Took down the big one last night. Shout out to all the content you guys and time and effort into doing every day. Love the YouTube vids. $87,000 win. What a way to kick this off. I told you we had some big wins this week. Like Bobby Nissan, this dude's just been crushing through and through. Almost took down 3 GPPs last night. So close, but what a great run. Got to thank Awesemo DFS and all the great tools and staff at Stokastic. If you're not a sub, it's costing you money. And then you see Bobby again. And shout out to Bobby, too, because he's running one lineup across all of the. I mean, look at those entry fees. $102,000 there. Big thanks to Stokastic. Your DFS tools are the best. Thanks to the crew for the great content you guys put out there every day. Let's keep the print fest going. Yeah, Michael Penn certainly did. The Hammer, 333 with a $40,000 win. Best content and projections around. Can't thank you guys enough. It's a huge one. See, it doesn't stop either. One of the best NHL analysts out there. Josh, I hate the fact that I have to, you know what? I'm not even reading this one. I'll let you guys read this to yourselves. It makes me uncomfortable, but the $20,000 win is fantastic for Josh. Check that NHL content out right here on the channel. And how about Elder Breaks? Taking one down in single entry. Daniel Jones let me down, but guess I'm a Hurts fan now, as you should be. $5,300 win there in the fair catch. And then Kevin Driscoll, huge thanks and all the hard work from the Stokastic team. Took down the first solo win of the year. Keep the content coming. What is that, $2 in the $2,000 in the Thursday NBA pick and roll? Beautiful. Love to see that ROI. And D. Spearman, first solo win of the year. We got another one. First solo win of the year. I want to try out my free membership for this NFL playoff weekend. Thank you, guys. Congrats, man. Yeah, quarter jukebox into the $100. Again, massive ROI. And it doesn't matter. If you guys are in a nickel or quarter arcade, as long as you finish top 3 in a field of 5,000 or more, you're getting up here, and you're still getting the free month of Stokastic plus Platinum. Michael Cooney, shout out to the Stokastic crew. Last month, I purchased U-Alls and another, that's a tough one, and another premium sub. Not going to throw shade. Used theirs for 3 weeks. Realized I had Stokastic. Used single game showdown tool. Bam, $834 on the play action. Congrats, man. Glad to have you here. And Scoot, how about Scoot? First time using you guys last night, and just wow, keep it up. Loving it so far. $320 on $11 in entries. And we close it out with these two. Brian Walton, 2nd and 5th in the NBA fadeaway on FanDuel. Glad they actually ran the contest. Thanks for the great content and analysis. Not much.
Yeah, this is
Oh my God.
this is new.
Is Mike making the music now instead of Jordan?
Yeah, this is not Jordan music.
Yeah.
Let's go.
Oh my God. I'm going long now. I'm hearing this intro music. Like, I don't know about this choice. What was that? Oh my God. Mike, whatever that was, never again. Never
messing with
again.
us.
I know you're excited because the team you pretend to root for is going to be in the Super Bowl, but just absolutely horrific music choices in the in-between shows. That was a disaster. Guys, thank you very much for coming in here. I don't even know I could advocate for liking the video and subscribing to the YouTube channel after that music. Nobody should like that, but do it for us. Don't do it for Mike. maybe like the video and we'll consider getting rid of that music or mic or something, make some kind of changes. Guys, that was a disaster. My apologies. And I hope you're doing well today. We're sponsored by No House Advantage. I'm joined by Neil again today. And last night's slate was a bit of a disaster in terms of how the news ended up breaking and everything. So I got very lucky and ended up doing well yesterday. Not that I expected to. I went to bed early and just stopped watching the games after the Warriors game. The news broke with Draymond Green being in and then he was out and all that. I was just like, this is nonsense. I'm not watching. And then I wake up and find out that I won the $3 on FanDuel. So that was exciting. Neil, how did last night's slate go for you?
Greg, I was going to do a whole bit. I was going to say last night's slate was such a disaster. The good plays didn't do well. The bad plays hit. You had to be an idiot to win and ask you how you did, but you ruined it. You went ahead and just told us right away that you won. Congratulations on winning the $3. That's very exciting. Nice job. No, it was an interesting slate. It was a tough slate to navigate for sure. You obviously did a good job of navigating a lot of changing news and really things changing quickly. I didn't do so great at doing that. I reserved a lot of spots for the Warriors, and then once Draymond and Steph were ruled in, I went and quickly changed that and ended up getting some guys that I wasn't intending. I got a lot of like Derek Williams, is it Derek Williams on the Bulls? Derek Jones. Got a lot of Derek Jones Jr. on the Bulls, and that did not go so well. So things didn't go so hot for me. And then I tried to get, after Draymond was ruled out 2 minutes before that game, I tried to jam in some Kuminga, but didn't have any spots left. So I had one lineup that briefly looked like it was live. And then like literally a second after I saw it, Luka got hurt. He was in the lineup. So yeah, did not go great for me, but congrats to you for winning what was a tough slate to navigate, but there were, some good places to find some edge.
Yeah, and luckily I did just well enough to keep myself warm with this jacket that I was able to get from Costco for $25. So, always little perks. It cannot be colder here right now. I don't know what it's like in the Midwest, but it is 10 degrees outside and there are whipping winds. So it is freezing and the heat in my house is just not keeping up with it. And I'm cold. I'm wearing a lot of clothes right now. I've got a blanket wrapped around me, just trying not to freeze to death over the course of the show. But the good news is that we've got Glenn Rivers is probably going to do some stupid shit. It'll get my blood pressure going. And then just naturally, my body will warm itself up. So Glenn, go do some stupid shit and make me warmer. And that is some of the injury news that we have to deal with today, because we're coming into the slate. Joel Embiid is questionable. Rudy Gobert is questionable. And then we also have Jabari Smith Jr. being questionable. And then in terms of news, we already know that's going to be impacting lineups a whole bunch is De'Aaron Fox. But it seems like a spot, because I was messaging back and forth with Lee, who runs our projections, B. Calicor, his handle on DraftKings and FanDuel. And we're talking about the possibilities of Joel Embiid sitting or playing. And on paper, it seems like a good spot for him to sit. But at the same time, too, there's been a lot of good spots for him to sit lately, and he just seems to play in all of them. So I'm just under the assumption he's more likely to play than not. But do you have any kind of lean there, Neil, or are you just looking at it 50-50?
Yeah, kind of 50-50. I think Adam made a good point on, I don't know if it was the morning show. I listened to half of the show before ours, and he made the point that Joel Embiid really wants to win the MVP, and a great spot to play is against the Spurs. So like if you're trying to win the MVP, rack up, a 40-point triple-double against the Spurs. It seems like a good spot to play. So I don't know if that factors in at all. But yeah, I think it's probably, I'd say greater than 50% chance that he plays, just because he has been questionable so often. But yeah, we'll find out shortly, right?
Yeah, you would think so, because it is the game. Well, actually, it's not the first time slot on the slate, 8 p.m. Eastern time. So we have a little bit of an hour buffer period. So, maybe something that we're going to have to be looking at in terms of late swap. And also, we've got the Rudy Gobert situation, where another guy who gets listed as questionable every single game. I started to think that injury listing is fugazi. There's no reason to take it seriously. It had been like 6 games in a row that he's questionable. And your Minnesota Timberwolves, what do they go out and do? They continue to list him questionable, and then he actually misses last game. So now I think I have to take this seriously. Another one that I don't really know what ends up happening, whether he plays or not. What we do know, though, is if Rudy Gobert is out, we like Naz Reid. It's just been a staple this year. When Rudy Gobert is out, you play Naz Reid, whether he gets in foul trouble or not. Every once in a while he does, but more often than not, we've seen him do really well in those spots. So Naz Reid would be somebody to consider as well. And then the Jabari Smith one, not as impactful. We'll get to it as it comes. If you guys have any questions for us, super chats, add us in the Discord channel. I'll be answering those as we go. And I know that there is an outstanding super chat from, who was it from? From Abby Schreier. Yeah. So Lofty had messaged us to us before. He wanted to get to your super chat, Abby, but they were just running back on time. So he asked me if it was okay if I answered at the start of the show, which of course, I love answering you guys' questions. So Abby Super Chat, is there anything wrong with Josh Richardson, Jaylen Brown, and Torrey Craig on FanDuel? Craig should play big minutes to guard Tatum and Brown. So let me go over and look at some of my exposures and the lineups I built on FanDuel. One thing that sticks out to me almost immediately, I don't have a lot of exposure to Jaylen Brown, but not somebody that I'm really prioritizing in my FanDuel build. So Jaylen Brown is priced at $8,500. And it's not just the matchup against the Suns isn't necessarily ideal, but something else about it also. There's a lot of blowout risk there that I think could also mitigate his minutes. Double-digit favorites. The Celtics are by far the biggest favorites on the slate. This isn't really a game I'm getting a lot of exposure to. It looks like Avi is doing a stack of it. Is that a game that you're really getting to, the Suns and the Celtics game, Jaylen Brown, Torrey Craig? So
I haven't started building yet. It's not one that I would, lean into, but I will say Jaylen Brown, I'm not playing FanDuel tonight, so I haven't looked at it all, but I'm assuming relatively low owned on FanDuel as well. We've got Jaylen Brown at 3.2% on DraftKings, Jason Tatum at 3.6%. So from that perspective, sure, some interest. And Chris Paul at 2.7%. Man, he's been chalk game after game, and now he's just 2.7% with no Devin Booker there. So I can see some appeal to playing this game just because it is so contrarian in a large field GPP. I think that this certainly viable to play some from this game, but I look at the games on this slate, and that's not one that I see and I want to prioritize it, just given that there is that blowout risk. It's not really one of the higher totals on the slate. In fact, it is the lowest total on the slate, at least as of earlier in the day. So not a game I'm prioritizing, but I would say I don't think there's anything wrong with it. Do you disagree with that? I mean, in a large field GPP, I think it's fine if you want to play that game.
I don't like the pieces he's playing. So Torrey Craig, for instance, is $4,700 on FanDuel. I have him projected for less than 20 fantasy points. He's less than 1% owned. And even the minutes, I don't buy he's going to play extended minutes just because of a matchup against the Celtics. Last game, it was a blowout, 23 minutes, whatever. We could take it with a grain of salt. But the game before that, which was fairly competitive, he only played 26. Torrey Craig's a fairly shitty fantasy producer. And now if we're going to say he's only going to play mid-20s minutes, it's hard for me to justify playing a $4,700 price tag for him. So Jaylen Brown, not a priority for me, but you could make a case for him in large field tournaments. Torrey Craig, that's a no for me. And then Josh Richardson, yeah, he's somebody who's fairly popular on FanDuel, but it seems about justified. $5,500, but with the players out there, I think that he makes sense to get to. Jaylen Brown's a targetable, low-owned option relative to, Jaylen Brown's upside, but I would not play Torrey Craig.
Yeah, I would say for the other guys, I mean, for like Jaylen Brown, it comes down to the rest of the line. If you're playing chalk everywhere else, I think Jaylen Brown makes sense as a contrarian spend-up option, but in general, not a player that I'm going out of my way to play a crazy amount of.
And by the way, somebody asked if I was trying to impersonate you with the flannel. No, I'm just trying not to die. Right? That's my whole thing right here. Is it's very cold out. I don't like being cold.
That's a good point. Matt Love says Cam Johnson is out, so maybe that gives a little bit more upside to Torrey Craig.
But still, it does mean that he has potential for more minutes. But there's still the fact that it's a difficult matchup against Boston. They're on the road. They're big underdogs. And I do think that if the Suns are trailing in this game, which I think is fairly likely, they're going to want to get more offense on. They're going to have to get more offense on the court and shooting to try to catch up. And like I said, I think that Torrey Craig is somebody who I've got projected the site. We've got projected for less than 20 fantasy points. That's a stretch for me at a not cheap salary at $4,700 on FanDuel.
Yeah. No, it's a bit of a stretch. In a 150 set, I think that he is a fine play just because he's, on FanDuel, you get 3 points per stock, and he's a good stocks player, a good defensive player. And if we do think that he could potentially see more minutes with Jason Tatum out there, I understand the play, but 4,700, I would like it a lot better if he was 4,000 or 3,500, obviously, as opposed to 4,700. It is asking a little bit much.
People are telling me 10 degrees isn't cold. It's cold, right? It's not warm. I'm not going outside in a big.
I live in Minnesota. We get negative degrees all the time. I can still 10 degrees is not comfortable to go out. It's definitely cold.
Yeah, it's cold out, right? I'm not built for this. I'm not built for this weather. I'm an indoorsman. I don't like it. I don't like the cold. John Bryant, super chat. Late. So who is the best play at each position on DraftKings? Let's go back and forth here, Neil. We could try to talk about some of the players that just overall make for the best options. And if we're just going projection points per dollar, point guard, or at least players that have point guard eligibility. And actually, I'm going to group point guard and shooting guard together because I think it's two of the same guys. Josh Richardson and Davion Mitchell. So Josh Richardson, just still, we've got players out for the Spurs in this spot. So he's somebody who's going to be benefiting. And overall, also somebody who's played a little bit of additional run in the absence of Devin Vassell, but additional players that are out for the Spurs now. Listen to this injury report. So Vassell remains out, but in addition, Trey Jones is out, Romeo Langford is out, and now Jeremy Sochan is out. And that's why we've got Josh Richardson figures to be a player who steps up and plays more minutes. Before, when I was talking about him on FanDuel, and even at his FanDuel price point, I think he's a decent option. And on FanDuel, he's $5,900, $4,800, so quite a bit cheaper over on DraftKings. I like Josh Richardson. Davion Mitchell benefiting from the absence of De'Aaron Fox, somebody who figures to play extended minutes. Now, I know we've seen him suck in this scenario before, but Flatman price, $3K on DraftKings, good matchup against the Pacers, no De'Aaron Fox. So those are a couple of guards that stand out to me. Josh Richardson, Davion Mitchell from a projection standpoint. Who are a couple of guards, point guard, shooting guard? I kind of group them together because a lot of these players, point guard and shooting guard eligible, that you think makes sense per John's question.
Yeah, I mean, those are the first two that jump off the page at you, Davion Mitchell and Josh Richardson. I'm with you on both of those. Kind of interested in Jalen Suggs. It's a tough spot to really project Jalen Suggs because we just don't know what the minutes are going to be with Cole Anthony and Markelle Fultz also there. We just don't. It's hard to really project how many minutes Jalen Suggs is going to get, but he is a great point per minute kind of guy. Like if he does get the minutes, he's going to put up fantasy points. So from that perspective, if we think Jalen Suggs could get up to 28 minutes, then he'd project for close to 28 fantasy points, obviously with upside for more than that. He's playing against the Wolves, not great defensively, high-paced team. So I have some interest in Jalen Suggs. Daishen Nix projects pretty well for us, point per dollar. I'd like him a lot better if we get, who is it, Jabari? Who do we have that's still questionable for the Rockets? We've already got Jalen Green. Yeah, Jabari Smith is questionable right now. I mean, I'm never going to love playing Knicks, but if Jabari Smith is out, that's just more minutes for the entire team to soak up. Obviously, they don't play the same position, but you'd still expect, I'd feel a little bit more comfortable in the minutes projection. But I don't love it regardless. Just somebody who projects well for us, point per dollar.
And by the way, Jabari Smith is in now, by the way.
Oh, he is? Okay.
We came into the show. He was questionable, but he is now in. So that is news that we just got a few minutes ago. But Jalen Green officially out, and hopefully they're hoping anyway, just reading the report here, that he could return Saturday. But the news we just got here that came across, Jalen Green out, Jabari Smith playing, and Victor Oladipo. Oh, no, that's for tomorrow. So never mind. Okay. Just saw the most recent news. But yeah, so Jabari Smith is now in for today.
Okay. So those are some of our value options that we've given so far. We can talk a little bit about the high end. James Harden is going to look incredible if Joel Embiid is ruled out. We also, I'm going to like Fred VanVleet against the Rockets. Obviously, there is some risk of a blowout there, but definitely an interesting play in that matchup with the Rockets. Damian Lillard against Washington projects very well. I'd say those are some of my favorite point guard options. Do you have anybody else that you want to throw out there? Oh, Tyrese Haliburton, I actually want to say as well. Obviously, even if you ignore the revenge narrative, he is playing against Sacramento. We know that we've got him playing in this game. I'm expecting him to play full minutes. It's just a pace-up game. Not a great defense, high pace against the Kings. So at 9,200, I think Tyrese Haliburton, very interesting.
Yeah, and then if we look at the forward spots for DraftKings, I think the players that just overall, some of these guys are popular, but certainly make sense to me. Forwards, Harrison Barnes, Lauri Markkanen, Franz Wagner, Paulo Banchero. These are all guys that are picking up ownership by the most part, but I do think it makes sense. And, Orlando to me has been a team that I've been dreading them having their full rotation for the entire year. But with that said, one thing that I think we can be confident in, it doesn't look like the minutes for Banchero or Franz Wagner are going anywhere. Everybody else, it's a little bit dicey, a little bit of uncertainty. Banchero, Wagner, these guys are both going to be playing pretty big minutes, it seems, no matter what ends up happening. So Banchero, Wagner, I like them in the matchup tonight against the Minnesota Timberwolves. And like I said, Harrison Barnes, just another Kings player that's benefiting from the absence of De'Aaron Fox, more opportunity, maybe a couple extra minutes for him, but also more usage. And then Lauri Markkanen, who's just been one of my guys and has really been a stud all year. And I think makes sense as a pay-up option. Now, if Joel Embiid gets ruled out and I want to end up playing more James Harden, I expect Lauri Markkanen is going to be a casualty of that. But at least right now, I think he's somebody that looks pretty good. So, Neil, small forwards, power forwards, per John's question over on DK, who are the ones that stand out the most to you as far as forwards go?
Yeah, a lot of good callouts there. Like Banchero, Barnes look good. We didn't mention Malik Monk. I also like Malik Monk quite a bit for the Kings when we were talking about cards. Aaron Nesmith, once again, were you part of the Twitter discourse yesterday at all with the Aaron Nesmith? Seemed like everybody was tilting. Oh my God, Aaron Nesmith is so chalky and going off, best game of his career. But then I look at like pros exposures today, and like most of the top pros had a lot of Aaron Nesmith, were like at or above the field on Aaron Nesmith. Some notable, like I think Petty Theft had 0 Aaron Nesmith. So I think that there was obviously room for debate about how good of a play Aaron Nesmith was, but I thought it was funny just seeing that a lot of the top pros played a lot of this guy, and there was still a ton of tilt on Twitter about how bad of a play he was. I think that he's still in play here at 3,600 in this matchup with Sacramento. 20% ownership, a bit much. I'm probably going to be under the field. I was under the field yesterday. I think I'll be under the field again, but in this matchup at 3,600, I do think that Aaron Nesmith is somebody that you can consider playing, especially after we saw him play, like 35 minutes yesterday? What was it? Let me pull that up.
It was
35 minutes and 32 the game before as well.
Yeah, so a big thing with Nesmith was just, and we were talking about it too, was, and ultimately what I tried to do is to align myself with the field on him, was just what was going to end up happening with the Warriors game. And basically how much of them you wanted was going to come down to the Warriors. And that was such a tricky situation. Even then afterward, Draymond Green gets ruled out, but the way he got ruled out was so bizarre. And it was something that was really hard to react to in a massive, massive way. I made some pivots towards it. But yeah, in hindsight, Nesmith, I think, did look better than what he appeared going into, like, just because we didn't get the Warriors value to open up in that kind of way.
Yep.
Any other forwards for you to talk about here? If not, we can move to the centers.
I guess Jeremy Grant was ruled in. Matchup with Washington looks okay. Okogie is our top value play at forwards. So what the upside is for Josh Okogie, he just doesn't really hit a ceiling very often. So I don't know that I love it, even though he is one of our top point per dollar plays. Oops, I went to center real quick. Let me just look at the top of the, because we've been talking about kind of the top point per dollar plays. I feel like we should touch on the top actual projected plays as well. Some of them at the top. I mean, we talked about, so Jason Tatum is our top projected. Of course, he's 11,000. So that explains the 3.6% ownership. We didn't talk about Anthony Edwards when we talked about cards. I was on the point guard tab, so I kind of avoided the shooting guards, but Ant also available at small forward. So I do like Ant. He's a little bit expensive, but coming in at 6.5% ownership against a Magic team that is pretty bad defensively. They do play at not a very high pace, but certainly in play. Lauri Markkanen, as you said, is somebody that you can play. Kristaps, I think, is in play against Portland. 4.8% projected ownership. That kind of interests me. And then Keldon Johnson just sees a huge usage boost with all of these Spurs out. The price is up there at 7,300, so not like a must play, but he's at least interesting given the amount of usage that we're expecting for Keldon Johnson at 5.7% ownership. Do you have any interest there?
Relative to John's question, no, just because I wouldn't call him like one of the top plays that I'm getting to the most. So to me, and there's multiple ways to answer his question. To me, I just stick with the Barnes, Markkanen, Wagner, and Banchero for my personal answers to the question, but could be interpreted multiple ways. And then center, I just have one guy to mention here. Everybody, well, not everybody, because it's not like his ownership is totally insane, but Domantas Sabonis is pretty clearly the top spend up option, in my opinion. He's projected for right around 25% ownership, expect to be in a fourth of the field's lineups. And in terms of pay up options on the slate, we've got 4 guys that are priced over 10K on DraftKings. We've got Joel Embiid, we've got Damian Lillard, we've got Domantas Sabonis, and we've got Jason Tatum. Of those 4 guys, Sabonis is my favorite. There's no De'Aaron Fox. Sabonis has already been a really strong fantasy option this year. He also happens to be the cheapest of all those guys, while also being one who, for me, actually projects to be the second highest overall fantasy point scorer on the slate. The only guy I have ahead of him is Joel Embiid, although he's currently questionable right now. Just Sabonis in the absence of De'Aaron Fox. He's popular, but I actually think there's a case to be made that he's not popular enough. So I'm going to be playing a whole bunch of Domantas Sabonis today. Are you going to be playing Sabonis, sans De'Aaron Fox? And are there any other centers that you'd mention here?
Yeah, absolutely. Love Sabonis without De'Aaron Fox. We did get somebody in chat had mentioned. Well, first I want to say I don't know if I mentioned Kevin Huerter, but I do think Kevin Huerter is interesting. I really just like that Sacramento, Indiana game environment in general. But Sabonis certainly in play. And then somebody in chat mentioned Buddy Hield. Nobody is on Buddy Hield today. It is a revenge spot. Now, I know that in general, people on our shows, we are opposed to factoring in narratives, right? Like in general, you probably are hurting your EV long term. Maybe if you factor in narrative too much, but I think that there is some value. Like, it does widen the range of outcomes when you factor in things like revenge, and Buddy Hield might want to, might play a little bit harder, might have some interest in shooting the ball a little bit more in a revenge spot. It's not something that I really factor in, but I do think just seeing that he's projected for what do we have projected for minutes? I was looking at the wrong. 32 minutes. He's a point per minute guy. He's 6,500. I think that Buddy Hield is certainly in play in this matchup. A game that we love here. So I just wanted to throw that out there. Somebody mentioned him, and I thought, yeah, I do actually think I'm basically interested in all parts of this game, just players who are playing in the game. I'm going to have some interest in. But as far as centers go, yes, I'm with you on Domantas Sabonis. Love him. Joel Embiid, if he's playing, I think that I'm going to want a lot of as well. Obviously very expensive, but matchup with the Spurs. We don't have him at that low of ownership, 19%, not that low, but certainly I'm interested there. Already mentioned Kristaps, Alperen Şengün, once again, somebody that you can play. And then whoever is playing center for the Timberwolves, I'm going to have interest in. And then Miles Turner again in that game, pretty interesting. Those are some of my favorites. Oh, and then at the bottom end, we had Eubanks for the Spurs is going to be a pretty good point per dollar play here. One of our top point per dollar plays on the game, for Eubanks for the Blazers. And then we also have some Spurs at the top there. Isaiah Roby, Zach Collins look pretty good.
Our sponsor here is No House Advantage. If you guys haven't signed up yet, when you sign up using our link, you're going to get up to $100 bonus on your first deposit. And there's a couple of reasons to go sign up in No House Advantage. First, obviously, the deposit bonus. Who doesn't like some free money? But even more free money, their contests overlay pretty regularly. It's something that they're doing to try to attract new customers, trying to grow their brand. One of the easiest ways to do that is just giving away stuff like deposit bonus, giving away stuff like overlay in contests, and the kind of overlay you're not going to see on FanDuel or DraftKings or anything like that. So take advantage of that. But also, they have their props that you could play against the house. So you might be in a state that doesn't have legal sports betting, but No House Advantage has you covered because they do have props that you could play against the house there. And we have projections for it over at Stokastic.com. We've got a new NBA Bet Pro tool, which has projections for props for pretty much everywhere. DraftKings, FanDuel, BetMGM, Prize Picks, No House Advantage. Any book you could think of, we probably got it covered over in our new NBA betting tool, NBA Bet Pro. And if you guys want to try that out for free, you get a 1-week free trial by clicking on the link below. And I think that goes in pretty handy with No House Advantage and some of the props against the house, because it's a good way to help you find some value, and something that Neil and I will be looking at a little bit in the post-lock show, because the slate might be locking in 26 minutes, but Neil and I aren't going to be going anywhere. We're going to be sticking around and reacting to any kind of news and all the different stuff that happens after the slate already starts. But some more super chats coming in here for us, and no news yet on Joel Embiid or on Rudy Gobert, the two most prominent players that are questionable on the injury report. So still waiting on those updates. But next super chat is from DC24 for a DraftKings large field, Trae Young and Jordan Clarkson, or Tyrese Haliburton and Rudy Gobert. So just to read these off again, Neil, Trae Young and Clarkson, or Haliburton and Gobert. Actually, can we also, Mike, can you pull up the player comparison tool? Let's see what that has to say as well.
Okay.
Yeah, no problem.
So I'm going to like the latter. I like both of those players quite a bit, Haliburton and Gobert. So I'll give my opinion right off the bat. I have more interest in, I think that Trae Young, certainly a fine play, just not like a huge priority for me. And then I forget who the other person paired with Trae Young was.
Yeah, so it was Trae Young and Jordan Clarkson, or Haliburton and Gobert. I agree with you. The only thing we really need to look out for here, well, not the only thing, but the predominant thing to look out for is, does Rudy Gobert play or not? Because obviously if he doesn't play, he's not going to be the answer there. But if Rudy Gobert is in, I do think he's a really strong option, especially because I think people are going to want to play him. Right? People get very upset about Rudy Gobert. You mention him, people get upset. You say he's good, people get upset. You think he's a good DFS player, people get upset. Even on some slates where he's projected to be highly owned, which I think is warranted today, a lot of times we'll see that people will kind of end up coming in underweight to him, just because it's one of those things where he's a player that the field typically doesn't like. But Mike, so the players here on the left side, it is Trae Young and Jordan Clarkson. Trae Young. And by the way, guys, this tool is free to use if you ever want to check it out over on our site. Jordan Clarkson. On the other side, Tyrese Haliburton and Rudy Gobert. Haliburton, one of my favorite players this year. Rudy Gobert, one of the public's least favorite players forever. And let's see what we've got here. So pretty close to a 50-50 proposition here with the 50-50 on both sides in terms of the overall projection. But one thing to point out here, look at the leverage scores for these players. Whereas it's also something to be noted that positively leveraged Rudy Gobert and Tyrese Haliburton, negatively leveraged Trae Young and Jordan Clarkson. So reason to me that I would look at this Gobert, Haliburton, that's the side I want to be on.
Yep, we're on the same page there. Jordan Clarkson, it is nice that those players correlate well. Clarkson and Trae Young playing against each other. So definitely a good question, but I still think I prefer the Gobert and Haliburton side.
All right, let's go to the next super chat from Dante. And Dante is, by the way, we just got some starting lineups in here. One of them is going to be significant. So we'll answer Dante's question, and then we can react to this because we just got the Kings starting lineup. And luckily, it's what we thought it was going to be. So no De'Aaron Fox. It is Davion Mitchell starting in his place alongside Kevin Huerter, Harrison Barnes, Keegan Murray, and Domantas Sabonis. So we'll talk about Davion Mitchell as a value play in a second, although we both alluded to already liking him before, but we'll follow up on that. But first, Dante, Gafford or Josh Richardson for last man in? And thanks, that is Josh Richardson for myself.
Yep, same.
Now let's talk about Davion Mitchell, who we just got word is going to be in the starting lineup. And I think a lot of people are going to be scorned by Davion Mitchell because I believe it was the last time we saw him in this scenario. He was uber chalky and he absolutely sucked. Let me make sure that I am remembering that correctly and that it wasn't, 2 starts ago or anything like that. But Davion Mitchell, his last start, which he made, here it is, December 11th against the Knicks. We saw Mitchell end up play 25 minutes, only scored 15 fantasy points. Obviously a suboptimal outcome. Now, with that said, is 15 fantasy points at a min price on DraftKings going to kill you? No, not really. And another thing, too, it wasn't the easiest matchup in the world on the road against the Knicks. And we have now seen 3 starts from Mitchell this year. And I think a lot of people might put a lot of stock into them. A couple things I'll say. Number one, they're small sample sizes. Something else, because it's only 3 games. Something else also, listen how difficult these matchups were, Neil. And that's something else I want to harp on. The matchup against the Pacers, far easier than these spots. On the road against the Heat, on the road against the Cavs, on the road against the Knicks. Those are 3 very difficult matchups. Now, does that mean he should have sucked as much as he sucked? No, probably not. But at the same time as well, this is somebody who for the year scores about 0.7 fantasy points per minute. And if we were going to give him, upper 20s, close to 30 minutes, it's still a player we're expecting north of 20 fantasy points from at a very cheap price point. So I'm going to be playing chalk Davion Mitchell. What are you going to be doing with him relative to his current ownership?
Yeah, so we have Davion at, where do we have him in terms of ownership?
I'll refresh to make sure I'm looking at the most recent numbers here.
36% is my latest. Yes. I think I would be above the field on that, to be honest. I think he's unlikely to fail. So he has a negative leverage score in terms of both optimal odds and boom percentage. We've got him at 36% ownership, 28% chance of booming, 25% chance of being optimal. But I think it's really unlikely that Davion Mitchell just absolutely kills you. Like, I think 15 fantasy points is about the floor for Davion Mitchell when he's starting in this matchup. So I still think I'm going to be above the field. And just if he fails, he's probably not killing me. He's obviously not helping me if he fails. But I think I'm going to be most likely above the field there. How about you?
Yeah, same with me. I'm looking to be overweight to the field on Davion Mitchell. And as you see right here, we've got the ownership projections up on the screen. If you guys want access to all the tools we have over at Stokastic.com, we now have a deal. You can get 50% off any subscription when you're signing up for the first time at our site. Just make sure you're using the link below. There's a coupon code, but it's already preloaded into that link. And it could be any package you want. So whether it's going to be our projection or our platinum package, which includes ownership projections, player projections for every single sport, everything out there. We've also got our lineup generator package now where it'll help you guys build lineups. And that's already less than $10. If you're getting that for 50% off, pretty cheap deal. So if you guys are maybe somebody short on time, don't have time to build out all your lineups, don't have time to watch our shows, the lineup generator might be the package for you because it is a really easy way to build a bunch of lineups in a hurry. And then you could upload them as CSV right over to DraftKings or FanDuel. But yeah, Davion Mitchell is somebody who I'm going to be overweight to the field to at the 36% mark here. I think to me, he's pretty clearly the top points per dollar play on the slate. And like you said, Neil, I find it unlikely he's going to kill me. His last start, he scored 15 fantasy points. People were going nuts about it. If he scores 15 fantasy points at 3K, am I going to be happy about it? Not happy, but I'm not going to say this is the end of the world either. He's starting. I think there's a pretty high floor there. Absolutely play him in cash games. That's for sure. And then if we talk about him over on FanDuel, FanDuel is a little more expensive. Even at $3,800, I'm still looking to play him on FanDuel. I think he's one of the better plays on the slate. $3,800 on FanDuel. How do you feel about him being just south of 30% owned at FanDuel at 3,800.
Yeah, that still seems reasonable. I mean, the minimum is 3,500 on FanDuel, so he's not that far off of the minimum. I'm still in, especially he's lower owned on FanDuel, so I still think I'd be above the field.
Some more super chats to get to. This one from Jamal Parker. Yo, Neil and Ben. I'm not Ben. You got the wrong guy here. I'll continue answering the question because I've been called way worse things in my life than Ben Rosen. Like
that's not a bad guy to be called.
Yeah, I've been called Eric Lindquist, and that I had to contemplate I had to contemplate everything. But calling me Ben, not the end of the world. But Jamal, Yo, Neil, and Ben, I guess that's me, unless he's talking about somebody else. He wants to know hope all as well. And Neil, are you going to do a show for how you set FC for NBA?
Yeah. So I don't have any plans to. I could suggest it to Nolan, but it's a little bit harder for NBA than like Showdown NFL or NFL in general. Yeah, I could do it. It's a little bit. What's hard about it for me is on NBA even more so than NFL. I really do make a lot of adjustments to projections to get to like exposure levels that I like. I mean, not a ton, I guess. I think sometimes I overdo it and sometimes my more successful slates are fewer, but it's hard to make a universal video about like, this is how I approach it every time. Some of the things I can say that I do basically always are, if it's a large slate, I'm basically always setting a max of 3 players from one team. I'm still using, I don't set an exposure cap on for NBA. But I just, instead of setting exposure cap, I adjust projections to, get to different levels of exposure. I use 20 to 30% randomness on NBA, not a ton of randomness. It's a harder video to do, especially because then a big part of what you're doing with NBA is also how you adjust for late swap. Like after we get late breaking news, like if there's significant news where somebody who wasn't a big part of my plans earlier in the day becomes a great projection, I'll reduce my randomness, sometimes turn off my randomness entirely, that kind of thing. And maybe even allow myself to have 4 players from a team, kind of open things up a little bit to let the optimizer work if we get news that I think the field isn't going to be taking advantage of, that kind of thing. So it's harder to do, but I'll think about whether it's possible.
Yeah. And I should say a couple of things. Number one, my brother's name is Ben. So that's something else. So yes, my mom has called me Ben before. That's been a mix up. And then also people asking where Eric is. So Eric went to a wedding in South Dakota, and just because of issues, some of the he's back on Twitter, but he's still on the no-fly list. So he's having some trouble getting home before he's able to get back, which those are the consequences of some of the decisions Eric makes. He's on the no-fly list, and what can you do? That happen when you try to nuke stuff on Twitter. Some more super chats to get to here. This one is from Thomas Rensberger. Robert Williams, Alec Burks, or John Collins and Malik Monk for FanDuel. That is John Collins and Malik Monk for me.
I'm guessing the same for me as well. I'd say Malik Monk the biggest priority for me of that group, but I haven't looked at FanDuel at all.
Yeah, and John Collins is somebody who's a pretty good option over on FanDuel. So actually in the lineups I built out for FanDuel, Collins was my 4th most rostered power forward.
Okay.
Or sorry, 5th. I counted incorrectly. So the power forward players I got to of more than him: Domantas Sabonis, Lauri Markkanen, Drew Eubanks, Harrison Barnes, and then John Collins. So Collins is a fairly high priority play. He's only $5,600 on FanDuel, and somebody that I like in the mid range over there.
Has Isaiah Stewart been starting for the Pistons?
So Isaiah Stewart.
I thought Jalen Duren took his place, but I see he's starting tonight.
So the starting lineup for the Pistons. So Duren's starting as well.
Yeah, no, I see that, but I what I'm wondering is if this is a change from what we had been seeing.
So here, yes, it is. He was starting. He came back from injury. He was playing like somewhat. Oh no, he was. Yeah. So he left a game due to injury. Came back, was coming off the bench. Now he's back in the starting lineup. So Stewart's. That's a good shout out there. By the way, actually, Stewart is somebody who I think I'm going to end up playing now.
Yeah, good matchup.
Yeah, so Sadiq Bey goes back to the bench. Stewart is starting. Also, Alec Burks sticking in the starting lineup. Isaiah Stewart as a starter this year. What have we generally seen from him? So he started far more. It's a change from the last few games, but basically what we've seen from the entire year. So 41 games played for Isaiah Stewart. He started 38 of them. He's come off the bench in 3. He's averaging 26 fantasy points as a starter. So $4,600. Yeah, I think there is some upside there.
Yeah, I like it too. It's a great matchup. I'm going to play some Isaiah Stewart.
Yeah, and a good matchup against the Hornets. Also, because the starting lineup came out just a few minutes ago, Dylan Brooks suspended one game. I don't think he's going to be all that popular either.
Yeah.
Update that, rerun some lineups, some more super chats to get to, and we'll try to get through these about as not too quickly, but try to get just to make sure we get through all of them. Won't spend too much time on any individual questions. Michael McKinney is asking us who are the 5 must plays in FanDuel Cash. So the players I would consider must plays in FanDuel Cash, one of them, Alec Burks. So Burks sticking the starting lineup, good matchup against Charlotte. Detroit's been starting him ahead of Jaden Ivey, alongside Jaden Ivey, ahead of Killian Hayes. So Alec Burks would be one for me. He's still cheap. Davion Mitchell's another one. Domantas Sabonis, LaMelo Ball, and Markkanen would be my 5th. So I'd say those are the 5 I consider the highest priorities for FanDuel Cash right now. Burks, Sabonis, Mitchell, Ball, and Markkanen. Those would be my 5. The next question we have is from my filler arc. Worth a shot wasting an early roster spot on either Hart or Grant with the missing Blazer, or just save it for Harris if Embiid is out? I like Jeremy Grant for it today. And generally, I'm apt to kind of want to try to reserve some roster spots. But we've got the Blazers shorthanded. There's no Yusuf Nurkic. So this isn't a spot where we're playing somebody who doesn't have value to maybe try to get value later. Like, there's already value in this spot because we already know a player's out for this team. So I like Jeremy Grant. I think I remember you mentioning him before as well.
I did. Yeah, exactly right. Like, it's not like we're wasting the spot on bad value options. Like that's our biggest concern. Is like last night, of course, would be the example that we thought Nesmith might be bad chalk, and then he turned out to be great chalk. I was hesitant to waste too much of my roster of my lineups on Nesmith, but I think this is just, it's good value chalk.
Yeah, I'm on
Not even chalk
Grant today.
Yeah,
Grant somebody to play for sure. Big boy IE. Please choose 2: Haliburton, LaMelo, Ant-Man. Oh, I think I know who Neil's going to choose, and Harden. So this is a little, I'm not going to say tricky, but I like having, I'm going to answer LaMelo and Harden. My answer, if Embiid plays, the answer is LaMelo and Haliburton. But if we do get Embiid out, then I think Harden's the best play of these guys. So LaMelo is certainly going to be one of them. Then for me, it's in between Haliburton and Harden. For now, I'm going to say Harden, just because he's somebody who I want to be able to get exposure to if Embiid doesn't end up playing. But if you don't want to take the chance with the injury, then I would say go LaMelo and Haliburton. Pick 2 of these 4, Neil. Haliburton, LaMelo, Anthony Edwards, your guy, or James Harden.
Yeah, so it's a really tough question because I agree with you. James Harden going to be the biggest priority if Embiid is out. If Embiid is in, not really much of a priority. I want to say Ant, but I don't think that it is Ant. Like, he projects worse than LaMelo and James Harden, and he's more expensive. So just I'm trying to be objective here. I'm going to go with Harden if Embiid is out. Otherwise, it's probably I think I actually have the exact same answer. It's going to be LaMelo and Haliburton if Embiid is in.
Yeah, and for so it's just going to depend how risk averse you want to be, because 10 minutes to go until lock, and so we're not going to get the Embiid news before that happens. But right. for right now, I would say take the chance on James Harden.
It is also, I just want to add that it also depends on the lineup itself. Like, Ant would look good in a lineup that is otherwise very chalky. If you want to spend up on somebody who's more contrarian, Ant is just 6.5%. That's where he becomes a little bit more valuable just because of the lack of ownership. But in a vacuum, I think we answered it correctly.
The next question. We just got a follow-up from Jamal Parker. LMFA Ogu. My bad, Greg. I'm half asleep still. Like I said, I like Ben. It's not like he called me Eric or anything. We're good. You didn't have to leave another super chat for that. A couple more super chats coming in, and then we'll try to bang out some Discord questions we got as well. This one's from John Rowland. Eubanks at $3,800 or Dern at $5,400. I mean, if you have all the space to spend up for Dern, just go to Dern. Points per dollar, I prefer Eubanks today, but I'm not leaving $1,600 on the table.
Yep, same page.
The next question is from Dante. Monk or Gafford? Fly, Eagles, fly. Didn't somebody else ask Monk or Gafford before? Also, either way, Monk.
Yeah, I think it was somebody else in Gafford, but yes, Monk. I don't know.
There we go. Fly like it. And you got Mike dancing in the background. I still haven't forgiven him for that terrible music he played before, but I'll let him slide. Some Discord questions that we got, and we'll get through the questions we have in here. The next one from M. Jennison. Any kind of rules you're setting for the Kings today? I have a max of 4 because some of these guys are so cheap. Like, it's not crazy for me to think that Mitchell could be in a lineup with 3 other Kings players because, Mitchell's the min price. So I'm good with 4 today. Neil, I know you frequently will limit yourself to 3, but are you going to allow yourself to play 4 Kings players tonight?
No, I'm still keeping it at 3, but I think 4 is reasonable. I'm sticking with my regular settings. I don't think they have so much value that's so much better than everywhere else that I want to go to 4. I'm just going to stick with my usual settings.
The next question we have is from Just Locks. Who are you? I think he means who do we have the most exposure to at power forward and center for FanDuel. So for me, read this off before, and it's still going to be the same guys. And, it's funny because a lot of the players that are power forward eligible on FanDuel, it's also a lot of the same center. So for me, it is Domantas Sabonis, Lauren Markkinen, John Collins, Drew Eubanks, Harrison Barnes. Those are the guys that I think are the best overall power forward center options. Isaiah Stewart definitely gets moved up now that he's starting, but he's not somebody I'd consider one of my favorite overall players at the position for FanDuel. The next question that we have is from, Wendell Carter Jr. was just rolled out. So that is going to change a lot of stuff. So
Yes,
let's talk about Wendell Carter Jr. being ruled out. And apologies to the other questions we got, but
so one of the Mo's or both of the Mo's are now in play. Mo Bamba and Moritz Wagner.
So I was already playing Franz Wagner.
Isn't it? Is Mo Wagner not there?
No. So Mo Wagner is his brother and a big man. But I was just saying also Franz Wagner. I was also already playing. But in terms of the big men now, I'm going to be playing. Let me look at the prices on these guys too.
So Mo is at 3,700. Mo Wagner 3,700 center eligible. We will want to get who's starting news, and then Mo Bamba is 3,000.
Yeah. So I assume that Mo Wagner is going to start, and that is going to make him. Well, right now I'm going to play as much of Wagner as I can. Wagner at, like you said, cheap price point on both FanDuel and DraftKings. Wagner this year as a starter, he has made 14 starts. He's averaging 28 fantasy points in those starts. Really high priority play relative to his price point. Enough time for people to swap to him because of when that game is going to be locking. It doesn't lock right at lock. We've got some time, but either way, Wagner, pretty clearly one of the top value options on the slate. So want to be getting to him more. And then Mo Bamba is also somebody who I think we could consider, but I don't know that I'm going to play much of him. Like Mo Wagner, I'm definitely going to get to. Mo Bamba benefits, but more of a large field tournament play, right? So if you guys are somebody just playing 1, 2, 3 lineups, I wouldn't play Mo Bamba unless we end up finding out he starts. I think this is going to be something like, I don't know, like close to 30 minutes for Mo Wagner. Mo Bamba plays most of the remaining minutes, maybe like 30 minutes, 16 minutes for Wagner, and then like 2 minutes for small ball, or like 2 minutes like Bol plays some center minutes. But I'm going to be prioritizing Mo Wagner here. Mo Bamba would just be a large field tournament option. There's nobody else here that I think significantly changes. It's going to be Mo Wagner as the primary benefactor to me that I want to get to. And I guess the question is how many shots are you willing to take on Mo Bamba in large field tournaments? Oh, by the way, and by the way, absolutely fuck me because we just got the starting line. It's Mo Bamba starting at center. So everything I just said, totally relevant. So reverse it. Right now I want to play Mo Bamba and Mo Wagner a little bit lesser of a priority play.
Yep. So yeah, we had already updated. Lee is on this. He had already updated the projection. I think under the assumption that Mo Wagner was starting. Obviously with Bamba, it's going to be
so I'm going to play now all of the Mo Bamba.
Yep.
Although one thing I will add, I think that Mo Wagner as the backup is more appealing than Mo Bamba was as the backup.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So let me update some of this, and we've just got a few minutes to go. Let me check to make sure there were no super chats that just came in. And no more super chats. So nothing that's a pressing matter to get to there. Just working on updating some lineups here. And there we go. The starting lineup, as you guys see, Fultz, Harris, Franz Wagner, not to be confused with Mo Wagner's brother. I'm against this. Brothers, players, same name, should not be allowed on the same team. Paulo Banchero, Mo Bamba. Some quick super chats to get to. And once again, play a lot of Mo Bamba. Play a lot of Mo Bamba now. And Mo Wagner as a backup, just to recap, you can consider him, but the higher priority here is going to be Mo Bamba.
I wonder if Drew Eubanks is going to get lost in the shuffle. I would guess Isaiah Stewart is the one who's probably going to not get a ton of extra ownership. But now we have so many good value center options with Eubanks, Stewart, the Moes, on top of all the other great center plays. It's a loaded position.
And some more questions we have in Discord. This one is from DA24. Thoughts on Harris on DK at 6K if Embiid is out? If Embiid's out, I would love Tobias Harris. Yeah. I would love James Harden. Actually, you know what's really nice about this Magic news? Because of the time the game starts, I think this is going to make it much easier to swap for Joel Embiid news. Because now I'm going to be playing a bunch of Magic guys. And now that I have a bunch of center exposure to Mo Bamba, this is really beneficial in terms of the flexibility we have for later on in the day. So I like this piece of news.
I do too. I mean, anytime you get late breaking news like this, I kind of love it.
Yeah, definitely. And look, I mean, Mo Bamba's, like I said, is going to be a priority. He's in almost all of my lineups right now. Export these, upload them. The next question we have from JEW, bigger priority, Ball or Van Vliet? I have more Van Vliet exposure. How about yourself, Neil?
I have, let's see, currently 17%. Yeah, I'm getting a
by
lot
the way,
more
did
Van
I say
Vliet.
Did I say that incorrectly? I have more Ball exposure.
Oh,
I might have
I'm the opposite.
Van Vliet.
I currently have 45% Van Vliet, 17% Ball. I am still adjusting things as I go, but that's where I'm at currently.
Yeah. So I was uploading my lines. I might have misspoke. I have more exposure to LaMelo Ball than I do to Fred Van Vliet. Also from JW, thoughts on playing Monk and Mitchell together in DK single entry? I have no issue with that. They're both really cheap. Yeah. Like if we're just talking, technically, is there negative correlation between the two of them? Yes, but I don't be concerned about it just considering how cheap those two guys are. Sniffs is asking us Eubanks or Bamba. I prefer Bamba now.
Yeah, I do too. Bamba's just going to project better. He's cheaper. I like them both, though.
Big Dream, Gafford at 1%. I have 35% of him. He's been playing great. Thoughts? 35% is a lot of Gafford, especially considering the center value we just got.
Yeah.
The next question we have here is from DM Brian. Can you speak to the best cheapies on DraftKings? So the cheap options I end up getting the most of now are Mo Bamba, Davion Mitchell, and if we're considering him cheap, Josh Richardson. Although really the primary ones I'd say here, Mo Bamba, Davion Mitchell, my primary punt plays.
Yeah, I'm also getting to, I don't know if you can consider him cheap. I'm getting to a ton of Isaiah Stewart, but yeah, it's Mo Bamba, Davion Mitchell for me, and then Isaiah Stewart is up there as well.
And in terms of other questions, we got one here from, and we are at lock now, but still, I think some of these are relevant. And also want to shout out Miami High Life says, loving you and Neil doing a show together. Great info. So some good support here for Miami High Life. Fade any of these guys for DK GPP. Suggs, Knicks, Okogie, and Roby. So just based on the news we just got, I'm not getting too much of any of those guys. They're just other plays that are now more high priorities in terms of value. So in front court, Roby, who's center eligibility, I prefer getting to Mo Bamba now. And then the backcourt, Mitchell to me a higher priority over Suggs, Knicks, Okogie, although Okogie a forward. But yeah, I didn't really play a ton of any of these guys. So in your final lineups, Suggs, Knicks, Okogie, Roby, did any of them end up being priorities?
No priorities. Let's see. I got to 7.5% Suggs. I got to 4% Okogie. Who are the others? We had, I don't think any of them.
Suggs, Dacian Knicks, Okogie, and Roby.
Yeah, 3.8% Knicks, and I don't think I got any Roby. So yeah, no priorities for me there.
At a point in time, those guys look better. It's funny. You do these shows, you prep all day, and then Mo Bamba ends up starting because Wendell Carter Jr. is ruled out. 8 minutes before lock. And then it changes all of the exposure I have to everything. So I am updating now, just doing a fight because I did like an initial update where it's just like, all right, I'm going to jam Mo Bamba and then update later. Looking at some of our projections now that it's updated, what stands out to you about this Magic situation, Neil? And anything in our projections got updated that catches your eye, or anything maybe you didn't think about beforehand?
So do you think this is our final projections update? Because currently we have Mo Bamba, from what I see, at 20.62 fantasy points. Is that right? Yeah. So I gave him a bigger boost than that. And then we've got Wagner at 25.62. So that kind of surprised me that we have Wagner. I don't think that this has changed since we got the news that Bamba was starting. So I'm not sure. Maybe Lee is still working that out. But if not, if these are our final projections, I guess it would surprise me that Wagner projects so much better than Bamba. I kind of inversed them. I moved Bamba up to a 25-point projection just for the sake of running lineups, and Wagner back to a 24-point projection. So I'd still get some of him. Are you in communication with Lee right now? I guess I could DM him also.
Yeah. I just sent him a message as well.
Okay.
I believe he's working on it right now.
Cool.
But yeah, my personal preference is Bamba. For me, I like getting to Bamba more. I feel better about his minutes, and also somebody who, while he's been inconsistent this year, is also he's also a really good points-per-minute fantasy producer when he gets on the court. So you see that also. I mean, overall for the year, Mo Bamba scores over a fantasy point per minute, 16.9 minutes per game, 17.2 fantasy points. So if he's going to play, 26 minutes or something like that, then you're projecting him for right around 26 fantasy points. Then we have the situation with some of the uncertainty with Rudy Gobert on the other side of the game, which also gets to the super chat we have from Corey Shea. Who do we pivot off of Reed if he doesn't start at forward? Well, a couple of things. If Gobert is out, Naz Reid is starting. We've seen this situation play out a bunch of times. I wouldn't pivot off him in that scenario. If Naz Reid starts, I'm playing him. If he doesn't start, he's just not a consideration.
Yep.
And
so I think that might be what he's asking. Oh wait, we just got that's Suns. Sorry, I thought we had the Sixers lineup. So I think that he's asking if Gobert plays and he's planning on playing Naz Reid, who would you pivot off of? So
he is $4,800, and it looks like he needs a forward. All right. So who is
and
the
Isaiah
best?
Stewart just locked, so we can't throw Isaiah Stewart in there. Jaden McDaniels would be in play. Jalen McDaniels, actually, both the McDaniels brothers are 4,700. Both would be. And Jalen just locked as well. So you could consider Jaden McDaniels. Let me see if there's anybody better here.
So so we're looking for somebody forward eligible who's playing. And by the way, also, he's looking for, which is a fine way to play. If you're assuming that Rudy Gobert is out and you just want to reserve roster spot for Naz Reid, so you're making sure you have him in there. If Gobert's out, I think that's a fine way to play this.
Yep.
But I understand. I think you have interpreted this correctly, Neil. If we do not have Naz Reid as an option, my pivot would be Jaden McDaniels.
Yep, Jaden McDaniels is certainly a viable pivot. I think he said the forward spot, so I'm assuming not just power forward, that you correctly aligned things in the. So then you consider Malik Beasley as well, sort of interesting. But yeah, I think probably Jaden McDaniels would be my top pick.
And by the way, one other thing too of why I like Mo Bamba, other than just him starting, Mo Bamba is also super, super cheap. So Mo Bamba, the flat min, he is $3K over on DraftKings. And the reason he's so cheap is because he is typically not been in the rotation. Now all of a sudden he's starting. Then if you look at the senders over on FanDuel, we've got Mo Bamba is $3,900 and Mo Wagner is $4,700. So just that price difference between the two sites. That's why I'm leaning towards Bamba. That, and also I just feel better about his minutes considering that he is going to be the starter. The next super chat is from the Hippo himself. This is Hippopotamus. He's saying, I was making quick minute adjustments or last minute adjustments to Bamba, but landed on guard on DK as my last spot with 6K is my best option. Franz there. All right. So 6K on guard.
A 6K guard.
That is Franz Wagner for me. Anybody you'd prefer? So it could be anybody, $6,000 or below with guard eligibility on DraftKings. My guy's going to be.
I think it's Wagner for me as well.
All right, yeah. So we're both on the same page there.
I think Lee got the projections updated. I see that they're at least different than they were previously for the Mo's. We still do have Mo Wagner projected better than Bamba, and we're expecting Lee has it at Mo Wagner playing 24, just over 24 minutes. Mo Bamba playing just under 24 minutes, which is probably right. They're probably about splitting minutes here. They're both just over a point per minute fantasy producers. And Bamba's 3,000 to Wagner's 3,700. So it's interesting. It's tough to know because currently I have 100% Mo Bamba, and now I'm questioning it a little bit whether I should cut back. Maybe I'll cut back just a little bit. Get a little more.
I had, just for the purpose of going into lock, I had 100%. It was just going to be easy.
Yeah.
I figured it was going to be easiest to get off of some of them and go on. I wouldn't be shocked if I stay at that number though.
I mean, it's similar, right, to Davion Mitchell. Like, he's not going to kill you. Like, what are the odds? I mean, he's been playing. We had him projected for like 1 minute prior to this, so there is some chance that if he doesn't play well, 5 minutes in, he gets pulled and doesn't come back. But I don't think that there's a high probability of that.
So one other thing that I'll say about this as well is I prefer Mo Bamba to Davion Mitchell. If you guys could only play one of them, or if you're just in a spot where it was, and by the way, the game's already locked, the Sacramento game, but if it could only be one or the other, my answer would have been Mo Bamba as my preference between the two.
Yeah, me too. I mean, he projects better.
And were there more super chats that came in? Hippo, yeah, we said that we liked Franz Wagner there. Corey Shea, you guys got it right. I have like 100% Naz Reid. Yeah, I think that's a reasonable way to play it.
Yeah,
just if Gobert is out, you're going to want to play a whole bunch of Naz Reid. So I think that is totally reasonable. It's aggressive, but it's not going to be. There's enough games where it's not going to be all that hard to get off of him.
Yep.
And then also if Joel Embiid's out, that would add another layer to this. Let me check Discord to see if we got any questions in there. If not, we'll look at some of the NHA stuff, and we can look at NBA Bet Pro and just see what stands out about the NHA against the house props. We've got a question. Oh, nope, that was from here. All right. Min Cash Merchant, max 4 or 3 Magic players. That is, so I didn't set any rules for it, but the most I got to was 3.
Yeah, but I set a max of 3 across the board today. That's what I do most days. That's where I'm setting the max for the Magic as well.
All right, I'm updated now. Could export these. Upload again. Not going to be the last time I do this today with all the guys on the injury report. I have a feeling that we're going to be doing more of this. So I'm going to do a quick injury report update in terms of what we're still waiting on right now. And the big one, Joel Embiid. That's somebody whose status, well, actually, who do you think would this is an interesting way to look at it. Who would impact the ownership of your lineups more? Joel Embiid being ruled out or Rudy Gobert being ruled out?
That's a very good question. Probably.
I think just
Rudy
because of, actually, I don't even, because both of them would change my lineups a shit ton.
Yeah.
Right. Because if Embiid is ruled out, I'm going to be jamming in James Harden. If Gobert is ruled out, I'm going to be jamming in Naz Reid. He would end up being in pretty much all of my lineups, but it would also affect so many of the other centers. I have a bunch of Mo Bamba right now. That would change. So yeah, it's kind of hard to say. I guess it probably would be Joel Embiid though, just because of how the outlook of my lineups would change with the amount of Harden I'd be wanting to get to.
Yeah.
Would you rather Embiid plays or sits?
I always love late breaking news, so I'd probably lean towards sitting, just so we can jam some Harden, and he'd probably be a little bit under-owned just because. I did play a good amount of Domantas Sabonis already, though. I got 36% Sabonis, but it's better than I was getting like 65%. I cut that back at the last minute with the hopes that potentially we get Harden coming in, but. Yeah, I think I'd still prefer that Embiid sits. You have a strong preference there?
I'd rather Gobert sits than Embiid sits, just because I already have like a good amount of exposure to Davion Mitchell, LaMelo Ball. I have more center spots open than I have guard spots. And I get a little nervous that I wouldn't be able to swap too hard and at the extent I want to.
Yep.
That, and like you said, I do have a bunch of Sabonis locked in, which I think could inhibit the amount of spend ups that I would have. Yeah, I'd rather between the two. It's going to be easier for me to swap onto Naz Reid than it is going to be for me to swap onto Harden at this point.
I will say, with all of this news outstanding right now, I'm less inclined to play players from the Phoenix-Boston game. I mean, they're still very low owned and certainly playable, but it's a low scoring game. We've got late news coming. I don't know. I'm not super inclined to play the game that's locking at 7:30.
I'm totally on the same page as you. So before, for instance, top of the show, like you can make a case for guys like Josh Okogie. We got the super chat. Somebody's asking us about playing Torrey Craig with the extended minutes in the absence of Cam Johnson. If we don't know in 18 minutes, 17 minutes, however much time we have until that game starts, if Embiid is going to be in or out, if Rudy Gobert is going to be around, I much prefer to have the flexibility. I don't want to take up lineup spots on guys that are like okay-ish plays when I know there's possibility that I'm going to have somebody lock and then a much better play could potentially open up like 10 minutes later. Yeah, maybe even less. Exactly. It could be like 3 minutes.
It could be. I mean, we talked about this yesterday. I was being a conspiracy theorist, and Greg informed me, well, a lot of times this news comes out on the half hour because that's when injury reports continue to come out throughout the night. So it could be literally the minute that it locks.
Yeah. So for people, and by the way, we have the Suns starting lineup is Chris Paul, Mikal Bridges, Torrey Craig, Dario Saric, and DeAndre Ayton. So another reason to maybe not really want to play Josh Okogie is that he is not starting. But is Dario Saric maybe somebody we might want to have interest in? Because Saric is now going to be thrust into the starting lineup, and we have seen him have some success. I'm still on the page of me personally not really wanting to prioritize Saric, but he's starting. Does that interest you at all?
He's nearly a fantasy point per minute guy. 3,500. Yeah, he does interest me. I think I'm changing my tune there. I had not noticed that Saric was starting. I think I'm going to have to play a little bit. He is power forward eligible. A lot of our favorite plays are only center eligible. We do have Naz Reid obviously at that spot as well. So, but I think that, Saric is at least interesting. You'd expect the fantasy point per minute to go down a little bit in this matchup. But yeah, some interest, moderate interest in Dario Saric.
So we've seen him. I'm not going to be on Saric in this spot. His last two starts, he played less than 10 minutes in each of them. Some of the games where he had really big fantasy outputs, Ayton didn't play. It's a little different in the front court now that Ayton is in.
He started for the Wolves for at least one season and was not good as a fantasy producer. So,
and once again, to me, it's just some of the games where he succeeded was when Ayton was out. I have less interest with him playing in the front court alongside Ayton. It's also a spot where I think there's a lot of volatility in his minutes. I wouldn't be surprised if he was.
Yeah, I agree with that too. So James Perkins asked, Saric in single entry, I would say yes. Single. I was thinking showdown. I misinterpreted the question. Single entry, probably no.
Yeah, I would say no to him in single entry.
I think I want to see if we have an updated projection. So we currently have him projected for 21 minutes, 19.5 is his projection.
It's a pretty reasonable projection. Yeah. But like I said, also there's some volatility, and I actually think there's probably there is a chance for upside. I think there's a greater chance for downside than upside with Saric though, because once again, his last two starts, these are the fantasy lines. January 21st against the Indiana Pacers, 8 minutes, 8 fantasy points. The start before that against the Brooklyn Nets, 8 minutes, 12.5 fantasy points.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Tough pill to swallow.
Yeah, it is. I mean, we've got him predicted for 1% ownership, so that's why I'm like, yeah, that's maybe somebody worth playing. But yeah, that is rough. It's taking a big chance for sure.
I wouldn't make him. If you guys had a lineup and you had $3,500 left and he's the last man in, and be like, this is the only option here, I'd be like, okay, whatever. If you're playing him in like any kind of heavy amount of lineups, I think that's a little ill-advised.
I agree. And I realize our projection is updated for it.
Yes.
I had cut back on my Josh Okogie, and now I see that my projection is higher than what we have. So, yeah. I don't think that Okogie is somebody that I'm playing at all now. Saric, let me see if I got any in this run.
And we got a super chat, by the way, while you're looking at that, from a Big Mike NY21. Is a Koji lineup poison now that he hasn't started? Yes, I would not play a Koji at this point.
I wouldn't play him either. Not a great fantasy. I wasn't really wanting to play a Koji anyway. So now that he's not starting, you can definitely not play him.
Avi Schreier, Stanley Johnson, a decent play on FanDuel. Let me check my FanDuel builds. My feeling is no. And after double check my lineups, the answer is still no. There's enough value to say I don't think you need to go to a Stanley Johnson. Is he somebody you got to?
Yeah, I'm with you. You don't need to play Stanley Johnson today.
Stanley Johnson, I have him for... Yeah, I've got Stanley Johnson at a little over 16 fantasy points, a little more than I thought I was going to off the top of my head. But either way, not necessary on this slate. He's somebody who's, even at a cheap price point, he's priced about fairly to a little bit overpriced, but there's so many good value plays, Avi. I wouldn't recommend you go to him.
We are not getting the start that I was expecting from this Kings Pacers game. I guess we're only 3 minutes in, but
hey, as we said before, those first 3 minutes,
those are the most important of the slate. Yeah. You kind of know exactly how your slate's going to go. Exactly. So like Greg knew yesterday, 3 minutes in, that he was going to bink. Like he was like, I'm winning this tournament. He told me.
Which is why I went to bed early and was like, this is the dumbest slate I've ever played to find time. I complained about this slate on Twitter for like an hour and a half. It's like, I don't know why I'm focusing my energy on this, and went to bed, and then it worked out. But the early starts to these games, by the way, all these games are very odd scores to start. Pistons, Hornets, 15-5. The Pistons are up. Isaiah Stewart, pretty good start from 3 rebounds, 2 assists, and a steal. Unfortunately, I swapped off a lot of them to get to Mo Bamba. And then the other stat lines in this game, Jaden Ivey off to a pretty good start with 6 points and 2 assists. For the Hornets, 2 points, 2 boards for LaMelo Ball, taking a lot of shots, but 1 of 4 from the field. So rough start for everybody on the Charlotte Hornets at this point. Pacers, Kings, like you said, very, very low scoring. Harrison Barnes has a 3. That is the only bucket scored for the Kings to this point. And for the Pacers, 2 points, 2 boards for Miles Turner. Tyrese Haliburton, 3 points, and that's it. And then all zeros for Aaron Nesmith after he destroyed last night's slate. Portland and Washington, 13-2. The Wizards are up to start this game. For the Wizards, Bradley Beal, Kristaps Porzingis both off to pretty solid starts there. Nothing else really doing. So those are the early updates for us to really freak out about. Now, Jay, we're at lock. Could you do a highest projected lineup for the Jazz and Hawks showdown? Yes, I'll run some lineups for you right now, Jay, and then I'll tell you who I ended up getting to for some of my highest projected players in that game after I run those lineups. So give me like 3 minutes here. I'm just going to upload my projections into Fantasy Cruncher for showdown, and then I'll run some lineups and I'll get back to you. Checking Discord. See what other questions we have. This one is from Tall Tail. He wants to know, can we play Bamba and Wagner together? I would not play Bamba and Wagner together today. Have you set any rules specifically for that?
Yeah, I was kind of thinking about that. But so we have them splitting minutes like exactly 24-24, which I think is a real possibility that they just, play 1 quarter each at a time. It's a very good question. I think it's a reasonable rule to set. I don't currently have the rule set. Maybe it's something that I should think about a little bit more, though.
Yeah, I wouldn't play them together. I don't think they're going to share the court together. And there's also a chance that, like we were saying before, Bol could play center minutes. If that's the case, then you get, what happens if the center minutes are 20, 20, and 8? Bamba could still do well in that scenario because he's so cheap and he's a point per minute fantasy producer. 20 minutes out of Bamba, you're still thinking you get around 20 fantasy points. But Wagner with the more expensive price tag, that could be a little tough. So I wouldn't play them together.
I think what I'm actually going to do is just set a rule, giving a negative bump to Bamba in my Wagner lineups. I don't know.
That also makes sense. So
yeah,
if
I have a few, I'd be okay with it.
If you guys go into Fantasy Cruncher, you could make groups where there's rules and you could downgrade the projection. Like you do -5%, -6%, and you can make that adjustable. That would be another way that you could go about doing, is just make it so that there is like an actual negative correlation in the projections. It wouldn't make it so, depending how many lineups you're playing, it wouldn't make it so you get 0% of lineups with both of them, but it would limit the amount that you get of them in the same lineup, which is not a bad way to play it. I'm running those lineups for you, Jay, in the background while I'm checking out these Discord questions. This one is from Marky Mark. Marky Mark, top 4 priority plays on the after hour slate. So the after hour slate, and I assume that you mean for the FanDuel 4-game slate that locks at 8. This is so I would like to give you a more concrete answer. What makes this really hard is this is a 4-game slate that has 2 really key players that are questionable. Like, I don't think I could answer this in a way where I could confidently tell you who are the players I want to get to the most, because we've got Joel Embiid questionable and Rudy Gobert questionable. Depending what happens with those guys, it would greatly impact who I would be getting to from those games. I know I like Mo Bamba, right? He's somebody I would like as a value play, but I'll run lineups from the after hour slate and see what I get to. But once again, with just the caveat of if Embiid and or Gobert out, that would greatly change some of the players I'd be looking at. But as I'm running lineups, Mo Bamba, certainly somebody who shows up here. And then some of the other players at point guard, Daishen Nix shows up. Jordan Clarkson shows up. I still think whether Embiid is in or out, I think Harden looks pretty good, but he would look really good for that 4-game slate if Embiid was to not play. Josh Richardson looks good for that slate. And Tobias Harris, another guy who I think looks decent right now for the after-hour slate on FanDuel, but would look really, really terrific if Joel Embiid is out. So I kind of actually like that as analysis. He could play Tobias Harris and James Harden even if Embiid is in, and then if he's rolled out, they look even better. So those some of the priorities. The next question is from MJazz24. Who do you not have that scares you the most? Mine is Tatum on FanDuel. Neil, who's somebody you're not getting a lot of exposure to that you might be shitting your pants about a little bit?
All right, so looking at the top projected players, it is also Tatum for me. I have 0% Tatum right now, and I'm not going to do anything to fix that. Man, I have 0 Kristaps. That kind of hurts a little bit. I was trying to play some Kristaps. Actually, right now I have 0 Şengün, which I was trying to get to. Yeah, I mean, Tatum is the one that I'm going to stick with 0 for sure, and that does scare me a little bit just because he is Tatum.
Based on the early results of these games, I could tell you I love Sabonis today. I still think he could turn it around, but not great the start that he's off to. We've got we're halfway through the first quarter. He's 0 points, 2 rebounds, and an assist. That is a suboptimal start. As for other players, I know you mentioned Porzingis off to a really good start. Not anything where I'm like, oh, I feel like I need to have him.
Neesmith had negative half a point last I saw, so maybe
so he's on pace right now to get more or less a season average across the last 2 games. Now he's going to do it in a weird way. It's going to be like with a 40 fantasy point game and a 0 fantasy point game, but hey, what a reach his level. That's right. How it goes. Let me think. From the later games now, is there anybody that you currently don't have? And I mean, this is also going to depend on what ends up happening with some, injuries, who gets ruled out or not. But is there anything that you're scared of? Maybe say a player gets ruled out that you don't have the flexibility to get to or something like that.
Let's see. For the late games, I mean, that Embiid news is, I guess that's 7:00. So there really isn't any late game. No, I think that I'm going to, so we have 3 games that lock at 8:00 and then 1 9:00 game. So are you talking about just from the Atlanta Utah game? Because I'm going to have flexibility to, I think, get to wherever I want at the 8:00 games.
I mean, you just said, who do you not have that scares you the most? So to me, it's probably my biggest fear right now is that I just have lineup spots that are taken up by like Davion Mitchell and LaMelo Ball, and that I wouldn't be able to play enough of James Harden. Like that's a player I'm most afraid of. Joel Embiid gets rolled out, and I don't end up having the flexibility to get to enough of James Harden. That's the thing that probably scares me the most here, especially because, actually, the biggest thing that scares me is that all of the players that have rostered from the early games are generally off to shitty starts right now.
Same,
like all of them,
except for Isaiah Stewart. I did play a good amount of Isaiah Stewart, and he at least started off really well. Yeah, he hasn't done anything now he started off really well, and now he's not done anything.
Yeah, I read off his stat line. He's done nothing since then. He's now checked out. So nothing looks great from the early games to this point. Bogdanovich is off to a really good start, but it's not like he was anybody people were getting to. Everybody from the Kings sucks. The Pacers guys generally suck. And then top scorer right now with Kristaps Porzingis. And I don't think very many people who had Porzingis out there. And let's really quickly go over to NBA Bet Pro. Although, I forgot. I didn't read off the Jay Super Chat. Jay wanted to know top plays from the showdown. My lineups are done running in here. The captains that I got to the most from that game, number one is Loughran Markkinen by a pretty wide margin. I think he is the top captain. Utility plays that I got to a lot of, also Markkinen pops up there. Trae Young, Jordan Clarkson, Malik Beasley. As far as cheaper players, Jared Vanderbilt, DeAndre Hunter. Those were some of the guys that popped up most meaningfully for me when I ran the showdown lineup crunch there. So Jay, I hope that helps you run your lineups. Danny says we missed his super chat.
Top 3 prize picks.
Top 3 prize picks. So let me go to our prize picks projections now, which also, like I was saying before, we've got NBA Bet Pro now, which has got prop projections for DraftKings, for FanDuel, for BetMGM, for No House Advantage, for prize picks. If you guys haven't signed up for NBA Bet Pro, you get 1 week free access clicking on the link below. And this is what I really do believe is going to happen if you guys try the free trial for NBA Bet Pro. I think you're going to make money in your 1 week that's going to pay for the subscription when you actually have to pay for it. And then I think it's just going to pay for itself in subsequent weeks for forever. So I think this is a really good product. I like the projections we have in it. I've been using it to make money, and I've seen some other people also who have sent us some pretty big screenshots and bet tracking history where they've done really well. So I could not recommend this higher, and it's super easy to use. And we've got prize picks in here, and these are some of our favorite prize picks props based on our projections. So the top one here that stands out, Şengün is an over-under of 6 assists. I know he's had some big games in the absence of other players on the Rockets. 6 assists seems like a pretty lofty prop for Şengün. We have him projected right around 4 assists. So that is a player that I also could get behind. Tatum at 8.5 rebounds. I would stay away from that one. That's one that I think is closer to fair in my estimation. D'Angelo Russell over 5.5 assists. I do like that one. And not that this is going to impact him all that much if Rudy Gobert was to be ruled out, but still, generally, you'd have to see the Minnesota Timberwolves rely a little bit more on their key guys in the absence of Rudy Gobert, like Anthony Edwards and D'Angelo Russell. So I like D'Angelo Russell over 5.5 assists. I like Şengün under 6 assists. Let's see, one more to get to. What else here that I like? Just kind of cross-referencing this with some of my projections. And here's one I like. Pascal Siakam over 5 assists. Great matchup for him against the Houston Rockets. There's probably the best matchup you could possibly have in DFS going up against the Houston Rockets. They played a really fast pace and they're absolute dog shit. So Pascal Siakam, who for the season is averaging 6.3 assists per game and is now also in a higher pace spot going up against a good matchup, bad defense. 6.3 assists has been the baseline for Pascal Siakam this year. 5 assists is over under at prize picks. I like the over there. So Danny, to answer your question, round it up here. Şengün under 6 assists. D'Angelo Russell over 5.5 assists. And I didn't do this intentionally. Pascal Siakam over 5 assists. 3 assist props, and that I like there. The next question is from Avi Schreier. Hield versus the Kings, Haliburton versus the Pacers, Sabonis versus the Pacers, and Sabonis versus scrimmage bud Miles Turner. I love playing narratives. Do they actually work out? Sometimes, all the time. I think that they're it's nondescript. It doesn't really matter, right? I think that you could certainly say there's certain players that are going to have a higher usage against their former team. And that could be something where a player would be like, hey, I really want to stick it to my former team. I'm going to take more shots. I want to score more. Here's the problem, though. We don't know that until after the game ends. There's no way to know. There was a game Jimmy Butler played against the Minnesota Timberwolves. I remember this a few years ago. It was one of his first games against them. The narrative going into that game was that Jimmy Butler hates this team. He's going to take a ton of shots. Everybody should play him in DFS. Do you know what he did, Neil? He took no shots in the game and just passed the ball and was a facilitator, kind of like a way to stick it to them, I guess. Like it's really hard to know how those narratives are going to play. Right. I wouldn't do anything other than look at like general projections.
Okay, first I got to say Rudy Gobert is available, so don't play Naz Reid. But also, I just wanted to comment on, you remember the whole practice thing where Jimmy ran to Rachel Nichols and was like, we beat the starters. Me and the third unit beat the starters. And then it came out later that he didn't score a single basket in that game. Everybody else on his team, these third stringers, were scoring all the buckets. And Jimmy Butler, he is such a beta. I mean, you would just whoop his ass. He talks a big game like, oh, I beat the starters. You didn't beat the starters. The third stringers beat the starters because they're NBA players too. They're good players. Give me a break, Jimmy Butler.
Sign the contract, Jimmy. You got the fight contract. He won't sign it. Show up. Doesn't want to fight me. Guys, thank you very much for sticking around. If you haven't done it yet, like the video, subscribe to the YouTube channel. Hope you guys have a great night. Hope you guys have a great weekend. Be back here tomorrow.